Syrian steadied her breathing and met the two girls' eyes. Layla held her katana in a tight, ready stance, sharp, disciplined, waiting for a mistake. Rura, on the other hand, looked like she couldn't care less, arms loose at her sides, eyes half-lidded with boredom. Somehow, that was more insulting. Layla stepped forward, measured and calm. 2 against 1, princess. Save yourself the trouble and surrender. Syrian didn't reply. Her focus was on Rura, the pink-haired one. That smoke ability made her unpredictable. You couldn't win a fight if your opponent could vanish into thin air. Layla struck first. Her katana flashed in the dim alley, a clean, practiced motion. Syrian met the blow with her own blade, the clang of steel echoing off the brick. The impact pushed her back a step. Layla pressed another swing, then another, each one fast, deliberate. She's trained, Syrian thought grimly. Not like the street thugs I've fought before. Rura giggled and dissolved into a pink mist. The haze swirled around Syrian like a living thing, and then Rura reappeared behind her, arm cutting through the air towards Syrian's neck. Syrian twisted just in time. The strike grazed her shoulder instead of crushing her throat. The motion threw her forward, straight into Layla's next attack. A heavy downward slash. Syrian raised her sword and blocked, but the force rattled through her arm. She was being driven backward, step by step, no chance to breathe. They're controlling the pace, she realized. Keeping me reacting, never attacking. Layla's assault didn't slow. Quick, precise, relentless. And every time Syrian tried to counter, Rura's smoke drifted at the edge of her vision, forcing her to stay alert, off balance. Too easy, Layla thought. She's defending well, but that's all. Is she waiting for something? Rura yawned. Can we hurry this up? I'm starving. Those sweet buns from earlier looked amazing. Quiet, Layla snapped, eyes still on Syrian. Something's off. Syrian blocked another blow, then jumped back, widening the distance. Her breath fogged in the cool air. She stood still for a heartbeat, then lifted her gaze. Her eyes had changed. No longer weary, no longer patient. Cold, focused, dangerous. Rura's grin widened. Ooh, angry princess. This might be fun. Layla felt it too, that subtle shift. There it is. The real fight. Syrian moved first. One blink she was still, the next she was gone. She didn't go for Layla. She went straight for Rura. Her sword slashed downward, fast and clean. It passed right through Rura's smoky body. See? Rura laughed. You can't touch me. But Syrian didn't stop moving. She spun with the momentum, her free hand snapping out. A glowing, thorn vine erupted from her palm and wrapped around Rura's ankle, solid and real even against her intangible form. Rura gasped. What? How? So your ability only works against physical attacks, Syrian realized, her pulse steady. Magic still binds you. She yanked hard. Rura stumbled, losing her form for an instant. That instant was enough. Syrian struck. Her blade flashed and cut deep across Rura's arm. Rura screamed. Real pain, not theatrics this time. Blood spilled between her fingers. You hit me. That hurt. Rura, Layla shouted, charging forward. Syrian met her head-on. Their swords clashed again and again, sparks flying. But this time, Syrian wasn't retreating. Her strikes came fast, heavy, controlled by a cold fury that made Layla's arms ache to keep up. She's faster, stronger. What is she? Syrian feinted high, and when Layla raised her guard, Syrian kicked low. Her boots slammed into Layla's knee. Layla staggered with sharp cry. You talk too much, Syrian said flatly, and brought the pommel of her sword down on Layla's head. Layla hit the ground hard and didn't move. Silence fell. Rura was still clutching her arm, sobbing. Syrian stood over them, breathing hard but steady. The anger in her eyes faded into exhaustion. She turned, ready to move on, then froze. A chill crept up her spine. Behind her, Rura's sobs stopped. The girl stood up slowly. The cut on her arm was gone, skin unbroken. A moment later, Layla stirred too, pushing herself up with only a faint groan. No bruise, no blood, nothing. What? Syrian barely had time to think before a sword slashed past her face, close enough to draw a thin red line across her cheek. She stumbled back. Layla stood there again, katana raised, smirking. "Not bad, princess." That actually stung a little. Rura giggled, her eyes bright. "You should have seen your face. You really thought you won." She beamed at Layla. "Your fake knockout was perfect." Layla tilted her head. "Yours too." The crying really sold it. Syrian's chest tightened. They were acting? The entire fight? They'd been toying with her, testing her. "If that's your best," Rura said, pointing lazily, "you're not even close to what Lola said that boy could do." "Enough," Layla said, her voice sharp now. "Gorik's waiting. Let's finish this." She vanished into motion, her blade a streak of silver aimed straight for Syrian's heart. Syrian barely got her sword up in time. The impact rang through her arms like a hammer blow, the force so much greater than before that it sent her skidding backward across the cracked alley. Her boots scraped hard against the stone, sparks flashing. Her sword arm trembled from shock. Rura materialized beside her in a swirl of pink mist, her smile bright and cruel. "My turn," she chirped and swung. Syrian tried to dodge, but the hit landed clean in her ribs. Pain exploded through her side. She gasped, stumbling back a few steps, clutching her midsection. "They're faster now," she thought, heart racing. "This is their real power." Layla approached, blade low and steady. "The vines were cute," she said calmly, "but I hope you've got more than garden tricks." Syrian gritted her teeth, forcing herself upright. She slammed her palm into the ground. The alley trembled as thick, thorny vines burst from the cracks, snapping toward her enemies like hungry snakes. Layla only laughed. Her katana flashed once, twice, each swing cleaving through the vines with ease. Rura turned to mist again, drifting lazily through the thorns like smoke through air. "It's useless," Syrian realized. "I can't beat them here. Not without my real weapon, not outside the forest." She lunged at Layla as a feint, then spun and sprinted for the mouth of the alley. "I need to get out. Live first, fight later." But Rura was already there. She reappeared in a blur of pink haze, blocking the exit with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Running already?" But we were just getting to the fun part. Layla's footsteps echoed behind her. Syrian glanced over her shoulder, trapped between them. No escape. Not like this. Her gaze darted upward. The alley walls were too high, too smooth. Every path was closed. Layla lunged again, faster than before. Syrian didn't meet her blade. She slammed her palm down instead. The pavement buckled, twisting as thick roots burst through the concrete, turning the ground into uneven chaos. Layla cursed as her boot snagged on one. "What now?" she snapped, regaining her footing. Rura laughed and dissolved into mist again, gliding through the air and straight through Syrian. A wave of cold spread through her chest, unnatural and wrong. It didn't hurt, but the shock made her shudder violently. She went through me? The thought made her skin crawl. That tiny hesitation was all it took. Layla vaulted off a root, closing the distance in a blur. Her katana arced down. Syrian blocked, the clash ringing out, but the impact jarred her arm, driving her back another step. "You're clever," Layla said, pressing her blade harder, her voice smooth and deadly. "But clever isn't enough." Syrian grunted, twisting away, her mind spinning through options. Then a memory, her sister's voice in a sunlit training yard. "Catch their blade, twist the grip, use their strength against them. It's risky, but it's all I've got." She feinted low, then swept her sword up, trying to hook Layla's katana. But the uneven roots betrayed her. Her footing slipped for half a second, just enough. The technique failed. Her sword scraped harmlessly off the other's blade. Layla's eyes flashed. Mistake. Her counter came in a single, perfect motion, a flick of the wrist, the katana's tip slicing across Syrian's ankle. Pain detonated through her leg. She screamed and fell, the world tilting as her knee hit the ground. Her vision blurred. She looked down to see blood spilling from a deep cut above her boot. "I can't move." Her stomach turned. "I can't even stand." Rura reappeared, her tone almost playful. "Ah, poor princess. She nudged Syrian's fallen sword away with her foot, letting it clatter into the shadows. No more sharp toys for you. Syrian tried to crawl back, propping herself up on one elbow. Her vision wavered between pain and panic. My sisters, can you hear me? Please, someone. Silence. Only the sound of her own ragged breathing. A memory of her father rose unbidden, his voice low, grim. The world beyond our woods shows no mercy, Syrian. Don't expect any. Her eyes burned. Knox, she whispered, barely a breath. She didn't even know why she said his name. He was just a human, a stranger, but he'd fought for her once. That was enough. Layla stepped forward, blade gleaming in the dim light. Her face was expressionless. It's over. Syrian closed her eyes. One tear slipped free, tracing a line through the dirt on her cheek. I'm sorry, my sisters. I failed you. A soft chime rang in her ears, a delicate melodic sound. Warmth brushed her skin, faint but unmistakable. The killing blow never landed. Syrian opened her eyes to find a small, golden shield floating in front of her throat, no larger than a plate, but radiant. Layla's katana pressed against it uselessly, stopped cold. What? Layla muttered, pushing harder. The barrier didn't budge. Then a bright, cheerful voice spoke inside Syrian's mind, so warm and out of place it made her freeze. Oh, hi. Sorry to interrupt your whole about-to-die moment, but you look like you could really use some help. Syrian blinked, dazed. Who are you?
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Syrian was still on the ground, her mind trying to catch up with everything that was happening. What is this? A spell? Who is speaking in my mind? Layla grunted and pushed her katana against the shield again. The metal groaned, but the shield didn't even flicker. What is this thing? She snarled, stepping back. Rura, can you get through it? Rura had turned back into a pink mist, and she floated towards a shield. She tried to pass through it, but the mist just flattened against the surface, unable to penetrate it. She solidified again, poking the shield with her finger. Nope, it's all solid, and it feels warm. You can call me Aurelia. The voice continued in her head, its tone unhurried and full of a power she had never encountered before. And yes, you are in a predicament, so I am here to offer you an accord. An accord? She thought. She watched Layla circle her, looking for a way around the shield. What kind of being has this much power to stop her blades so easily? I will help you escape this situation. In return, I want you to do something for me. I want you to stay by Knox's side, to be his ally. Her breath caught. Knox? What do you know his name? That boy has never had anyone who truly cared for him, the voice said, and a wave of profound sadness seemed to flow with the words. His life has been one of isolation and cruelty. The walls he has built around his heart are a fortress born from pain. Even that dark power he wields is a weapon forged from his own despair. Layla gave up trying to get around the shield and just stood there, watching her with frustrated eyes. Are you going to hide behind your magic trick all day, princess? Syrian barely heard her. The voice's words were painting a picture of Knox she hadn't seen, a story that explained the coldness in his eyes. She speaks as if she has watched his entire life, she realized. This power, this knowledge, this is no mere sorcerer. This is something divine. He needs a friend, Syrian of Life Woods. Her voice was softer now, almost pleading. He needs someone who won't abandon him. Someone who will see the person he could be, not just the monster he fears he is. I cannot force this upon you. It is not a command. It is a request. From one who is worried. Can you be that person for him? Can you help him find something to believe in beyond just his own strength? Syrian looked down at her hands. Her ankle throbbed with a dull pain. She thought of Knox in the arcade, a real smile on his face. She thought of him giving her the bed in that hotel room, a simple kindness he probably didn't even realize he'd shown. He was difficult and cold, but she had seen flashes of something else underneath. He was just a boy, a human boy who had been hurt by the world. Yes, she thought back, her resolve hardening into a silent promise. I will do it. I will stay with him. A feeling of immense warmth spread through her, starting from her chest. The voice in her head returned, full of a powerful, genuine relief. Thank you, child. Then, let us uphold my end of our agreement. The golden shield in front of her suddenly flared with a bright, blinding light. Layla and Rura cried out, throwing their hands up to cover their eyes. The light was so intense it washed out all the color from the alley, turning everything white. When the light faded a moment later, Syrian was floating inches above the ground before gently falling back to the ground. Layla blinked a few times to clear her vision. She saw the princess still standing there, but something was different about her now. Her hair wasn't its normal color anymore. It was a deep, dark green. And her eyes, they had changed too. They looked weird with these little black squares in them. She was holding a new sword, and it looked like the handle was made out of wood. The ground under her feet was cracking, like it couldn't handle her just standing there. Rura wasn't giggling anymore. She was shaking, her whole body trembling as she pointed a finger at Syrian. Layla, I don't like this, she whimpered, her voice small and scared. She feels dangerous. Layla knew what she meant. The air around the princess felt heavy, and the look on her face was super calm, but not in a good way. It was the calm of someone looking at ants they were about to step on. We are so fucked, Layla thought, her own hand tightening on her katana. Syrian took a single step forward, and the ground cracked even more under her boot. You were saying something? She asked, her voice calm and even. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to fill the entire alley. About how this was over. Layla swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. Now, hold on, she started, trying to sound tough, but her voice wavered. We can talk about this, right? No need to do anything crazy. Rura just hid behind her, peeking around her shoulder. Syrian tilted her head just a little. I'm not the one who needs to be concerned about crazy actions. Her new sword lifted, its wooden handle looking plain, but the blade itself seemed to hum with a strange energy. Layla didn't wait for her to attack. She just reacted. Rura now, she yelled and lunged forward, her katana aimed right for Syrian's chest. At the same time, Rura dissolved into her pink mist and shot around to attack from behind. Syrian didn't even seem to track them with her eyes. She brought her new sword down in a clean arc. There was a creepy silence in the alley for a second. Then Layla's top half just slid off the bottom half with a wet sound. Rura stared, her mouth hanging open. The bored look on her face was gone, replaced by total shock. Layla, she whispered, her voice shaking. Syrian was not there anymore. She had moved without a sound. She was now standing right behind Rura. Rura turned around slowly, her eyes wide with fear. "You, what are you?" she stammered, taking a step back. "The end of your mission," she said. Her voice was completely flat. She swung her sword again, another simple, clean motion. Rura didn't even have time to turn a mist. She just stood there as the blade passed through her. For a moment, nothing happened, and then a thin red line appeared across her middle. She looked down at it, a confused expression on her face. Then, just like Layla, she fell apart. The alley went completely quiet then. There was no traffic noise, no birds, nothing. The power that had filled her suddenly left. A wave of dizziness hit her so hard she had to lean against a brick wall to stay on her feet. The dark green color faded from her hair, returning to its normal shade. Her eyes went back to normal too. The wooden sword in her hand dissolved into little golden specks of light that vanished before they hit the ground. She slid down the wall, her legs giving out. She landed hard on the dirty ground, right next to Layla's body. She had won. Syrian sat there on the ground for a long time. The alley was quiet now, and the bodies were gone. They had just vanished into little golden specks of light, so it was like they were never even there. Her ankle was hurting a lot, a steady throbbing pain that made her feel a little sick. Her mind was clear now, and the conversation with that being, Aurelia, replayed over and over. I will stay by Nox's side, to be his ally. She remembered making that promise. It had felt so right in that moment when she was about to die. She understood now. She really did. Aurelia's words about Knox being alone, about his pain, it all clicked with what she had seen in him. That coldness he had wasn't just in being a jerk. It was something else, something deeper. He's just broken, she thought. And that thing, that man, it's just him using his own hurt to fight back. The thought made sense, but it didn't make her feel any better. Allying herself with a human, it went against everything she had ever been taught. Her people had suffered because of humans. But then she thought about him again. He had fought for her. He hadn't run away from Lola, even when he was clearly outmatched. And he had been decent to her. He hadn't treated her like a princess. He just treated her like a person. But why does a powerful being like Aurelia care so much about him? She wondered, pushing herself up with a grunt of pain. Her ankle screamed at her, and she had to lean against the wall for support. What's so special about that human boy? She didn't have any answers, just a new promise she had to keep. She took a limping step out of the alley. The city was still busy, people walking by, without a clue what had just happened a few feet away. She needed to find him. He said he was going to meet his friends. His girls. She remembered the word he had used, and she did not like how it sounded. Knox walked through the city center. The clean streets and shiny buildings were familiar to him. He'd grown up in this city, and he'd walked these same sidewalks countless times before, usually feeling invisible or angry. This part of the city, with its expensive shops and nice restaurants, had always felt like a different world, one he could only look at from the outside. Now it still felt like a different world, but for a whole other reason. He looked at the people in their clean clothes, talking on their phones, acting like nothing had changed. Look at them, he thought, a thought of something like pity or maybe contempt passing through him. They have no idea. They're just a few blocks away from monsters and death, and they're worried about what to have for lunch. He didn't feel like an outcast anymore. He just felt separate, like he was seeing the real world, and they were all still living in a dream. He pushed the thought away and focused, his eyes scanning the crowds. He wasn't here to judge people. He was here to find the girls. Where the hell are they? He was about to give up and just find a bench to wait on when he spotted her. Kendra. She wasn't hard to miss. She was standing near a big fountain, arguing with some guy who was at least a foot taller than her. Of course she's arguing with someone, he thought, a small smirk touching his lips. He walked over, weaving through the crowd. And I'm telling you, you're standing in my spot. She was saying, jabbing a finger into the guy's chest. So move it before I move you. The guy just laughed. Your spot? The whole city's a free-for-all, lady. Now get lost. Hey, Knox said, his voice quiet, but it cut through their argument. Kendra spun around, her eyes widening when she saw him. Knox, where the hell have you been? We were about to think you ditched us or got yourself killed. She sounded pissed off, but he could hear the relief underneath it. The big guy she was arguing with looked from Knox to Kendra, then just grunted and walked away. I got held up, he said simply. Are you guys okay? Did you find your families? Kendra's angry expression softened a little. Yeah, we did. My family's fine. My little brother was a wreck, but he's okay. She looked around. Veza and Yedao are over there. She pointed towards a small cafe with outdoor seating. They found their people too. We were just waiting for you. Good, he said, and he meant it. He was glad they were okay. They walked over to the cafe. Veza and Yedao were sitting at a small table, and they both looked up as he and Kendra approached. Yedao's face broke into a huge smile. Knox, you're here, she said, jumping up from her chair. Veza just gave him a small nod, her eyes doing a quick analytical scan of him. Your condition appears to have stabilized. Yeah, I'm good, he said, pulling up a chair and sitting down. What about you guys? Everything all right at home? Yedao nodded, her smile fading a little. My parents are safe, but our house it's not good. We're staying with some neighbors for now. Veza stirred her drink with a small spoon. My family has secured our residence. They are prepared for further incidents. There was a little silence, then Yedao spoke. It's still a mess back home, she said quietly, stirring her now cold drink with a straw. My mom, she just wouldn't let go of me. She was crying so much. Her eyes got a little shiny, making her look down at the table. She was so scared. Yeah, same, Kendra added, her voice a bit rough. My little brother cried for like an hour straight when I walked in the door. She shook her head, a flash of anger in her eyes. I wanted to punch something, see him like that, you know? He's just a kid. Vesa just gave a small nod. My parents have already inventoried our supplies, she stated, her voice as calm as ever. They're boarding up the downstairs windows. They said it was the logical thing to do. Knox just sat there, quiet, listening to them. He watched Kendra get all fired up, Sayeda try not to cry, and Vesa just being Vesa. They were talking about their families, about going home to people who were worried sick about them. And even when they talked about the bad stuff, the messed up houses and the fear, they would smile a little bit when they mentioned their families. He understood now. They had something to go back to, something to protect. They had lives, real lives with people in them. And those lives were here, in this city that was trying to hold itself together. They didn't belong out there with him, fighting whatever monsters crawled out of the next hole in the ground. He waited for a pause in their conversation. Then he spoke, his voice low. You guys should stay here. The three girls stopped talking and just looked at Knox. Stay here? What are you talking about? Kendra asked, her brow furrowed. With your families, he said, his gaze moving from one to the other. You found them. They're safe. You should stay with them, protect them. You don't need to be running around with me. There was a moment of silence. Then Kendra started to laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh, just one of pure disbelief. Yeda giggled a little, covering her mouth with her hand. Even Vesa cracked a small, rare smile. Are you serious? Kendra asked, wiping a tear of laughter from the corner of her eye. Did you hit your head or something while you were gone? We're not leaving you, idiot. Yeah, we're a party, Yeda added, her voice a bit more confident than usual. Knox's expression didn't change. He wasn't joking, and their laughter just bounced off him. I'm not kidding, he said. The tone of his voice, cold and serious, made them stop laughing. The smiles vanished from their faces. This is it, he said, his voice flat. We're done. You guys have people who need you here. I don't. It's that simple. He looked at them, his eyes unreadable. It's been whatever, but it's over. This is goodbye. Yeda was the first to speak, her earlier confidence wavering a little, but her voice was firm. No, she said, shaking her head. We're not going anywhere. She is correct, Vesa stated. Our chances of survival are statistically higher as a group. Your combat prowess, combined with our developing abilities, creates a more effective unit. Leaving you is an inefficient strategy. Yeah, well, we're not going to. So you can drop the whole lone wolf crap, Kendra shot back, leaning forward on the table. You think we can't handle it? After everything we went through at the school? After we fought with you? We're your party, you moron. We stick with you. That's how it works. He looked at the three of them. Kendra was fired up, Yeda looked determined, and Vesa was just logical. They weren't going to budge on this. He knew that now. He had tried to do the right thing, to cut them loose so they could be safe, but they were too stubborn, or too loyal. He wasn't sure which. You're all idiots, he said finally, but there was no real heat in it. He leaned back in his chair, a long sigh escaping him. His plan to go it alone had completely backfired. Kendra grinned, a triumphant look on her face. Yeah, we know, but we're your idiots, so you're stuck with us. He wondered if their loyalty had something to do with that whole soulmate thing the Oracle had mentioned. The thought was strange, and he wasn't sure what to do with it. Just then, a private chat window from Aurelia popped into his vision, its text bright and cheerful. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. It totally does. That's a big part of it, for sure. Sparkles, but also, I wasn't supposed to hear that thought was I? Oops. Grinning face with sweat. He just stared at the text, his mind going completely blank for a second. She heard that? How can she hear what I'm thinking? Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. Oh, it's not me, Knox. It's you. Your thoughts are kind of leaking out? Just a little. It's probably because your connection to the system is so special, or maybe it's that new corrupted mana you have. It makes you a bit of an open book to us sometimes. You should probably be careful with that. Sparkling heart. He still didn't get it. Leaking out? What does that even mean? He pushed the confusing thought aside. There was something more important she'd said. So, it is because of that soulmate thing, he thought, aiming the question at her. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. Well, yeah, that's part of it. The soulmate bond makes it super easy for them to trust you. It's like a shortcut to friendship. But that's only half the story, you know. The other half is all you. They feel safe with you because you don't lie to them. You're always telling them the hard truth about things, and even when you're a total jerk about it, they know you're not messing around. They know you'll keep them alive. That's why they're not leaving. Smiling face with smiling eyes. He read her message a few times. Because I'm honest with them? That's a reason to stick around. He had never thought about it like that. He was just saying what was obvious to him. He didn't know it made them feel safe. Knox? Hey, you in there? He blinked, and the chat window vanished. Kendra was leaning across the table, snapping her fingers right in front of his face. You completely spaced out on us for a minute there, thinking about how awesome we are. He just grunted and leaned back in his chair. Something like that. Yet I was smiling, a real, happy smile. So we're all staying together? Looks like it, he said. The idea didn't feel like a burden. It just felt like a fact. Good, Kendra said, sitting back with a satisfied look. So what's the plan? We can't just sit at this cafe all day. We need a base or something. And more supplies. And food, yet I added. Vesa put her small spoon down next to her glass. A base of operations would be a logical next step. She looked at Kendra. It would provide a secure location for rest and strategic planning, which is more efficient than remaining in a public space. Yeah, exactly, Kendra said, nodding at Vesa. A base. See, Knox? We got good ideas. She leaned back in her chair with a confident smirk. So what's the plan, boss? Where are we setting up shop? He looked at the three of them, then back at his own hands on the table. He had to tell them, and he knew they weren't going to like it. The plan is you guys find a base, he said, his voice flat. I'm not staying. Kendra's smirk vanished instantly. What? What do you mean you're not staying? We just went through this whole we're a party thing like 2 minutes ago. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Are you trying to ditch us again? No, he said, shaking his head. I'm not ditching you. He let out a breath. I have something else I have to do. A mission. I have to get someone home, and it's not here in the city. Someone. Yet I asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Who? And where are you taking them? Kendra demanded, her voice rising a little. You can't just drop that on us and expect us to be cool with it. Sai, this is getting annoying. They left the cafe and started walking down the street, the argument picking right back up where it left off. I still don't get it, Knox, Kendra said, jogging a little to keep up with his long strides. A mission? What kind of mission? You can't just say that and not tell us what's going on. It's my mission, not yours, he said, not looking at her. You guys have your families to worry about, so just find a place here, stay put. Yet I walked on his other side, looking worried. But what if you need help? We're a party. We're supposed to help each other. I don't need help, he said, though he knew that was probably a lie. That mercenary Lola had almost killed him, and the only reason he was still walking was because of some weird power he barely understood. Vesa, who was walking just behind them, spoke up, her voice calm and even as always. Your logic is flawed. A solo mission into unknown territory against an organization that employs high-level mercenaries is statistically a low percentage endeavor. Our presence would increase your operational effectiveness. He almost snorted at that. Operational effectiveness? She sounds like a robot. He didn't answer her. He just kept walking towards the hotel where he'd left Syrian. He knew they were following him. He could hear their footsteps on the pavement. Kendra wasn't about to let it go. So who is this someone you have to take home? Anyway, she pressed, her voice getting a little louder. Is it that girl from the cafeteria? Did you run into her again? It's not her, he said, his jaw tightening. He didn't want to think about Ava. Oh, so it's a different girl then? Kendra's voice took on that teasing tone he was starting to hate. You ditch us for a day, and you've already got another secret girlfriend? You work fast, man. She's not my girlfriend, he growled, stopping and turning to face them. Then what is she? Yet I asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. He just stared at them, the three of them looking at him, waiting for an answer. Sai, this is so annoying. Why do they care so much? Just shut up about it, okay? He said, his voice sharp. It's complicated, and it's my problem. He turned and started walking again, faster this time. Ooh, touchy, Kendra muttered behind him, but she didn't sound offended. She sounded amused. Definitely a girlfriend. Yet I just giggled quietly, her eyes flicking between Knox's back and Kendra's grinning face. Vesa remained silent, her expression unreadable as she processed the new information. They followed him for another block until he stopped in front of a hotel. Then they all saw her. A young woman was standing near the entrance, leaning against the brick wall as if she was waiting for him. The girl's conversation stopped instantly. Kendra's mouth fell open a little. "Knox," she said, her voice dropping to a weird whisper. She pointed a shaky finger. What's with her ears?" Yet I peeked around Kendra's shoulder, her eyes as wide as they could get. "Are those real? They're so pointy." The woman, Syrian, looked up as they approached. Her ears were long and tapered to a delicate point, unlike anything they had ever seen on a person before. Knox just sighed, completely unfazed by their reactions. "She's an elf. Get over it." His casual statement hit them like a physical blow. "An elf," Kendra repeated, taking a step closer to Syrian, her earlier anger forgotten and replaced by pure disbelief. "You're telling me elves are real? Like from books and games and stuff?" She was staring so hard at Syrian's ears that Syrian actually took a small step back. "Yes," Syrian said, her voice calm and formal, though she looked a little annoyed at being gawked at. "I am an elf." "Wow." Yet I breathed, stepping out from behind Kendra. She looked completely mesmerized. Vesa just stared. The morphological structure of her ears is consistent with depictions of elves in pre-cataclysm fantasy literature. Kendra just waved a hand at her. Yeah, sign stuff later." Holy crap. She walked right up to Syrian and squinted at her ears. "Are those real? Can I, touch one?" Syrian took another step back, looking very uncomfortable with Kendra being so close. "They're a part of my body, yes." Knox let out an annoyed sigh. "Kendra, back off. Stop being weird." He looked at Syrian, a frown on his face. "I thought you were going to keep those hidden." She looked from Kendra's prying eyes to Knox. "Why did that goddess ask me to look after him? He already has these 3 with him." The thought was confusing, and they're so loud. "That ability requires a certain amount of mana to sustain," she explained, her voice quiet. "I have expended all of my reserves." The girls all looked at her then, their curiosity shifting to concern. Knox's expression changed too, his earlier annoyance replaced by a sharp focus. "You're out of mana? Why? What happened after I left?" She hesitated for a moment, not wanting to admit the full extent of the fight. "I was followed," she said, choosing her words carefully. 2 individuals confronted me in the park. They were associates of the one called Lola." Kendra's head whipped around to look at him, then back at Syrian. "Lola? Who the hell is Lola?" Damn it, he thought, a muscle twitching in his jaw. He didn't want to get into this now. Syrian glanced at him, seeing his frustration, before answering Kendra. "She is a mercenary. It would seem there's a bounty on my head." Kendra's eyes widened, and she looked back and forth between Knox and Syrian. "A mercenary? A bounty? Is this the mission you're talking about, Knox? You're bodyguarding someone with a price on their head." Her voice got louder with each question. "I'm not a child to be babysat," Syrian said, her formal tone returning. "That's not what I meant," she shot back, rolling her eyes. "My point is you 2 are a huge target now. Are you hurt?" Yet I asked, stepping forward and ignoring Kendra. "Did they do anything to you?" Syrian shook her head. "I am unharmed," she said, which was mostly true. She didn't mention her ankles still throbbed or the fact that she had barely survived. But they were formidable. I was forced to use all of my strength to repel them. Vesa, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Your account suggests you were successful in the engagement," she stated. "However, the complete depletion of your mana indicates the encounter was highly taxing. It was a tactical victory at a significant strategic cost." "Yeah, whatever that means," Kendra muttered, her hand now resting on the hilt of a short sword she had strapped to her own belt. She looked directly at Knox. "This is what I was talking about. This just proves you need us. Okay, this has gone on for far too long." He looked at all of them with a serious expression. "You will all stay here. Knox knew being rude to them was not going to work. He looked at their faces and saw nothing but stubborn resolve. This isn't working, he thought. Yelling at them is like yelling at a brick wall. Kendra was still talking, her hands on her hips as her voice got louder. So you're just going to walk off? After everything we did? What about the party, huh? He needed a new plan. He had to get them to stay put without another big fight. He couldn't just tell them they were weak, because that would just make Kendra want to prove him wrong. Okay, think. What do they want to hear? He remembered what Aurelia's message had said about them trusting him. He had to use that. He held up a hand. Kendra actually stopped talking, surprised by the gesture. It's not that I'm ditching you, he started. His voice was different now, more serious. It's the opposite, actually. Kendra squinted at him. The opposite? What's that supposed to mean? This mission, it's going to take me out of the city, he explained, looking from one to the other. I don't know for how long. While I'm gone, someone needs to be here holding things down. He paused for a moment. Someone needs to build something. And I can't do both at once. Yeda tilted her head, looking confused. Building something? You mean like with hammers and stuff? No, he said, shaking his head. I'm talking about a base. An organization. A place where we can all gather information and get stronger. He leaned in a little, his voice dropping. This world is a mess, and it's only going to get worse. We need a headquarters, a place that's ours. Veza's expression shifted just a little. A forward operating base, she stated, her voice even. That is a logical and strategically sound objective. Exactly, he said, pointing at Veza. But I can't be the one to build it. I have to go deal with this other thing. He made sure to look at each of them. So I need you guys to do it for me. For us. Kendra crossed her arms, still looking skeptical. And why us? Why can't you just find some other people to build your little clubhouse? This was the part that mattered. He looked her right in the eye. Because I can't trust anyone else, he said, his voice completely serious. I trust you three. You've been there. You've fought with me. You know what's really at stake here. He then turned to Yeda. You're smart. You know how to keep people calm. He then faced Veza. You're organized. You can figure out all the logistics. He finally looked back at Kendra. And you're the muscle. You're the one who can make sure no one messes with what we're building. Kendra's skeptical look faltered. The corner of her mouth twitched. He thinks I'm a muscle? Well, he's not wrong. Yeda was already nodding, a hopeful look on her face now. We could do that, right? We could find a place to set up, maybe an old warehouse or something. But we'd be here, and you'd be out there alone, Kendra argued, though her voice had lost some of its angry edge. That still sounds like a stupid plan to me. I have to go alone, he insisted. But I need to know there's something here to come back to. I'm putting you all in charge of that. He leaned in again. It's the most important part of the whole plan. Just as Kendra opened her mouth to argue again, Syrian stepped forward from where she had been watching quietly. It is a sound plan, she said, her calm voice cutting through their argument. A warrior cannot be in two places at once. He has given you a mission of great importance, a foundation upon which you can build your future strength. She looked directly at Kendra. To refuse such a trust would be unwise. Kendra looked from Syrian to Knox, then back to Yeda and Veza. She let out a long, frustrated sigh and kicked at a crack in the pavement. Fine, she grumbled. We'll do it. We'll build your stupid base. She looked up at him, a determined fire in her eyes now. But it better be the best damn base this city has ever seen. I know it will be, he said, almost sounding like he meant it. He could see the relief wash over Yeda's face, and Veza just gave a single, sharp nod. He had done it. He had gotten them to stay without a huge fight. It was a lie, a trick to keep them safe and out of his way, but it had worked. The girls were talking excitedly now, already brainstorming ideas. Kendra was suggesting they find a building with a good roof for a lookout, and Yeda was talking about finding a place with running water. We will require a defensible location with limited entry points, Veza added, ever the pragmatist. Knox just nodded. All right, you guys figure it out. We're leaving. He gestured to Syrian. Wait now, Yeda asked, looking a little panicked. Yeah, now, he said. No point wasting time. He gave them one last look. Don't mess it up. Kendra just waved a dismissive hand at him. Yeah, we got it. Just don't you get yourself killed out there, boss. He turned and started walking away, not looking back. He heard Syrian's light footsteps fall into place beside him. They walked in silence for a few minutes, leaving the sound of his party's excited planning behind them. Man, he thought, a small, humorless smirk on his face. This soulmate thing is no joke. Syrian was looking at him. He could feel it, but he didn't turn his head. He knew a question was coming. "Knox," she said finally, her voice even. "May I ask you something?" He grunted, which she seemed to take as a yes. "You expended considerable effort to locate your allies," she began, choosing her words carefully. "It was your primary objective upon entering this district. Yet, the moment you found them, you created a convincing fabrication to ensure they would remain behind." She paused, then looked at him directly. "What?" He kept walking. "I told you. I need them to build a base." "No," she said, her voice firm but not accusatory. "You needed them to be safe. You gave them a purpose so they would not follow you into greater danger." She tilted her head. "You search for them only to leave them. It is a contradiction." He stopped and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "So now she's analyzing me." He hated it when people tried to figure him out. "It's not a contradiction. It's just logic." "Explain this logic to me," she prompted, her gaze unwavering. He let out an annoyed breath. "Look," he said, his voice flat and cold. "They have people, families, homes, all that crap." He gestured vaguely back towards the city center. "That stuff makes you weak. It makes you hesitate." He saw a twitch on her face, disagreement in her eyes, but he kept going. "Out there, where we're going, you can't hesitate. Not for a second. They get themselves killed over something stupid, or they get me killed." He shrugged, as if it was that easy. "They're a liability. They have something to lose." "I don't." She doesn't get it, he thought. "Attachments are just anchors. They'll pull you down and drown you when things get rough." Syrian looked at him for a long moment, her own thoughts unreadable. "He speaks of them as a weakness," she considered, yet his actions were designed to protect that very weakness he scorns. He separated himself from them not because he sees them as useless, but because he values what they have, what he lacks. "They're better off here," he said, breaking the silence, "playing with their little clubhouse plan. And I'm better off not having to babysit them." He turned and started walking again, his pace brisk. End of story. She watched his back for a second. He was pushing people away again, building his walls higher. But this time, she thought she could see the reason behind stones. She fell in a step beside him without another word. She understood. He would never admit it, but he had left him behind because he cared. Aurelia, Knox thought, was that the right move? Leaving them behind like that? Her response was almost instant. A private text box appearing in his vision. "Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. I think you did what you thought was best to protect them. That's super noble. Sparkles, but they are your soulmates, you know? It's going to be hard to keep them away for long. They're all connected to you now. Sparkling heart." The main god chat erupted right after, and he winced internally. Baron von Cynic. He's walking off with the elf. Look at him, all self-important. He thinks he's protecting them, but he's just running from his own attachments. Pathetic. Lord of Carnage. Cutting them loose was a smart move. Attachments get you killed. Now, he can focus on getting stronger without worrying about a bunch of kids. Lady Veritas. He abandoned his responsibilities to his party. He created a team and then immediately dissolved it through deception. That is not the action of a leader. He was so tired of this soulmate thing. "They're not my soulmates," he thought, the feeling of annoyance leaking out. "I barely even think of them as friends. They're just people who started following me around. Trickster got Hermes Foru, hear that? The kid's getting grumpy about his fan club. Faced with tears of joy, someone doesn't like the S word." He shut the chat down in his mind and just kept walking. Syrian didn't say anything. She just walked with him, her presence a quiet weight at his side. They walked for a long time, and the city finally gave way to smaller buildings, then to nothing but open, cracked roads. They ate some of the snacks he'd bought and drank some water, but they didn't talk much. The sun went down, then it came up again. They found a burned-out car to rest in for a few hours, then they just kept walking. "We have been moving for some time," Syrian said finally, her voice a bit tired. This city of yours is much larger than I first thought. Yeah, it's a long walk, he agreed, looking at the road ahead. We should be getting close to a place called JK Road soon. That's the way north. It was late in the afternoon on the second day when they finally reached the spot. He knew it was the right place from the old, faded street sign that was still standing miraculously. But he just stopped and stared. Syrian came to a stop beside him. What is it? Is something amiss? He didn't answer right away, his brain trying to make sense of what he was looking at. This isn't right, he said, his voice low. There's supposed to be a road here. A big one for lanes. And houses, lots of them. But there wasn't a road, and there weren't any houses. All there was a forest, a huge, dense forest with trees that looked ancient. They were massive and tall. They weren't the kind of trees that grew in this part of the country, or world for that matter. And it shouldn't have taken us 2 days to get here, he added, a confused frown on his face. From the city center, it should have been a few hours, maybe a little more on foot. Not 2 whole days. Syrian felt the manna in the air, and it was a familiar feeling, almost like home. She knew this energy. It was the same that flowed through the lands of her own world. It wasn't the refined, gentle manna of life woods, but it was from her world. She was sure of it. This whole forest had been pulled across, just like she had. Then she felt something else mixed in with the familiar energy. It was a cold, watchful feeling that made the hairs on her arms stand up. The hostility from within the trees was so thick she could almost taste it. This place feels weird, Knox said, his voice low. He was staring into the dark trees, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Syrian looked at him, a little surprised. You can feel it too? She asked. He gave her a quick glance. Yeah, it feels like something in there really doesn't want us to come in. She was impressed. He can sense that. A human of his level shouldn't have that kind of awareness. She had always been taught that humans were blind to the deeper currents of the world. He was growing so fast, it was almost scary. So, what do we do? She asked, her own hand near her sword. Do we find another path? He looked at the forest, then at the empty road behind them. A different path to where? This is the way north. He shook his head. We don't have a map for this place. We go through. He is not afraid at all, she thought. His directness was a constant surprise to her. He just saw a problem and walked right at it. That is a reckless course of action, she told him, her voice even. We do not know what lies within. The presence I feel is considerable. Yeah, well, sitting out here isn't going to get you home, is it? He shot back. We're losing daylight. We go in a little way, find a spot to camp for the night, and then push through tomorrow. He didn't wait for her to agree. He just started walking towards the edge of the trees. She sighed and followed him. He was right. Standing out here was pointless. The sun was getting low, and the shadows of the massive trees were stretching long across the broken road. As they stepped under the first branches, the air immediately felt different. It was cooler, and the sounds of the open road died away, replaced by a deep quiet. The trees were so thick that not much light got through to the forest floor. He just walks in like he owns the place, she thought, staying close behind him. He is either very brave or very foolish. Knox was looking around, his eyes scanning their new surroundings. He didn't look scared, just focused. They found a small clearing a little way in, a spot where a few trees had fallen and left a patch of open ground. It felt a little less claustrophobic than the rest of the forest. This will work, he said, dropping his backpack. We can see if anything tries to sneak up on us here. Syrian nodded, looking around at the dark shapes of the trees that surrounded them. The feeling of being watched was even stronger now. She pulled some firewood from the undergrowth, and Knox used a lighter from the pack to get a small fire going. The little flame pushed back the darkness a bit, its light making the shadows dance. They sat by the fire, eating some of the trail mix from his endless pouch. He stared into the flames, his expression unreadable. So, he said after a while, his voice quiet. This forest is from your world, isn't it? She looked up, surprised by the question. Yes, the manna is familiar. And that thing we feel in here, the hostility, he went on, is that from your world too? She nodded slowly. There are many dangerous creatures in my world. Creatures that feed on fear and thrive in darkness. She looked into the woods around them. Whatever is in here, it is not friendly. He just grunted and threw a small stick into the fire. Dangerous creatures. Huh? So more monsters. He wasn't really surprised. That seemed to be the new normal. Later, as the fire burned low, he laid out a blanket for her. You should get some sleep, he told her. I'll take first watch. She wanted to argue, to say she could watch first, but she was tired. Her body still ached from her fight with the two mercenaries. She nodded and lay down, pulling the blanket over herself. Nox sat with his back against a large tree, his sword across his lap, and just watched the darkness. The forest was quiet, too quiet. He could hear his own breathing, the crackle of the fire, and nothing else. Something's not right, he thought. He felt his mana coiling in his chest. It's like he can feel it too. It's restless. He kept his eyes on the trees, waiting for something to move. Nox sat with his back against a tree, the fire crackling in front of him. On the other side of the small blaze, Syrian was asleep, wrapped in a blanket. He closed his eyes and tried to focus on the dark energy settled in his chest, pushing it around his body to get a better feel for it. This corrupted mana is weird stuff. It feels heavy. A bright blue screen suddenly popped into his vision, appearing right in front of his closed eyelids. What now? New main mission issued. Objective: cleanse the forest of its corruption. Reward: 100,000 EXP, plus 100 stat points. 1x legendary class-specific armor chest. Title: Heart of the Forest. Accept. Y/N. He stared at the words on the screen, his eyes flying open. 100,000 EXP and 100 stat points. The reward for saving the princess was big, but this was on a completely different level. A legendary armor chest, and another title made the offer too good to refuse. Cleanse the forest? What does that even mean? Kill whatever hostile thing is in here. The mission was vague, but the reward was very clear. He felt that familiar pull inside him, the strong desire to get more powerful. He looked over at Syrian, who was still asleep. I could just ditch her. The thought was a cold, practical idea. I could take on this mission myself and come out of it way stronger. He remembered his fight with Lola and how he'd almost died. No, I'm not strong enough to do this alone yet. And if I ditch her, those gods will probably throw a fit. He focused on the blue screen again. This is too good to pass up. He made up his mind right then. Except, the blue screen vanished without a sound. The forest was quiet again, with just the crackle of the fire for company. So now I have two missions. Save a princess and save a forest. This is getting complicated. He needed to come up with a plan, but his mind was blank. He let out a quiet sigh and closed his eyes again, trying to go back to his mana practice. A few hours passed, and the fire had burned down to just glowing embers. He was starting to feel the exhaustion of his watch creep in. He heard a small noise from the darkness beyond their campfire, a sound like a twig snapping under a heavy foot. His eyes opened instantly, his whole body going still as he stared into the dark trees. What was that? He didn't see anything, but the feeling of being watched was suddenly much stronger. Syrian, he said, his voice a low hiss that cut through the quiet. Wake up, we've got company. She was awake in a second, sitting up without a sound as she threw the blanket off. Her hand went straight to her sword, which was lying in the dirt beside her. What is it? She asked, her voice quiet but alert. Don't know yet, he whispered back, getting to his feet. Finally, some action. He couldn't stop the small smile that pulled at his lips. This feeling wasn't fear, this was something else. Something big moved in the darkness just past the firelight, its shape barely visible among the trees. It stepped into the clearing, and he saw that it was some kind of wolf. The thing was massive, as big as a car, with matted fur that looked like it was falling out in ugly patches. Two of its eyes were glowing with a strange red color that lit up the space around its head. Syrian made a small sound next to him, her knuckles white where she gripped her sword. A fair wolf, she whispered, her voice tight. They hunt in the dark. We shouldn't have made a fire. The wolf just stood there, watching them with its glowing eyes, a low growl rumbling in its chest. The air felt heavy, like just being near was putting a weight on his shoulders. So this is the corruption I'm supposed to cleanse, he thought, his own corrupted mana stirring inside him. He felt a weird excitement bubble up inside him. A blue screen popped up in his vision, the text bright against the darkness of the forest. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. Oh no, a fair wolf. Those things are super scary. Face screaming in fear, be careful, Nox. It's way stronger than those gobdogs. Lord of Carnage. Now that's a proper monster. Look at the size of it. Let's see what the kid can do against something with real teeth. Baron von Cynic. He's going to be its midnight snack. This should be entertaining, at least for a minute or two. He ignored their chatter and took a step forward, his own sword held loosely in his hand. The fair wolf's head lowered, its red eyes fixed on him. Nox, wait, Syrian said, grabbing his arm. You can't just charge in. It's not like the hound from before. Fair wolves are smart, and they're strong. So am I, he said, shaking her hand off his arm. And I'm not going to just stand here waiting for it to make the first move. This isn't just another monster, Syrian said, her voice tight with urgency. That's a fair wolf, and they feed on mana. Any magic you use will just make it stronger. He looked from her worried face to the massive wolf. Make it stronger, huh? My mana isn't normal magic, though. This corrupted stuff is different. He felt that familiar confidence swell up inside him. My power isn't like yours, he told her, his grip tightening on his sword. It won't be a problem. Nox, don't be a fool, she pleaded, but he was already moving. He charged forward, his body low to the ground. He focused on his mana, pulling it into his left arm. The black, solid mana formed around his limb like a second skin, a gauntlet of pure shadow. Let's see you feed on this. The fair wolf's glowing red eyes locked onto the corrupted energy. A deep, guttural sound that was almost like a purr rumbled from its chest. The red light in its eyes brightened, and the creature seemed to grow a little, its muscles bulging under its patchy fur. It actually likes this stuff, he realized a second too late. The fair wolf moved with a speed that didn't match its huge size. A massive paw, tipped with claws as long as his forearm, swiped through the air. He tried to bring his armored arm up to block it, but the attack was too fast and too powerful. The claws hit him square in the chest. The force of the blow was incredible. He was lifted off his feet and thrown backward through the air. He slammed into a thick tree trunk with a sickening crack, and the world went blurry for a second. He slid down the rough bark and landed hard on the ground, the air knocked from his lungs. The wolf took a slow, deliberate step towards him, its massive head lowering. Its jaws opened wide, saliva dripping from its long teeth. It was going to finish him right there. Shit, I messed up. Just as the fair wolf lowered its massive head, a sharp crack echoed from the side of the clearing. A rock bounced harmlessly off its thick hide. Beast! Syrian's voice rang out, strained but carrying a note of command. Turn your gaze to me. The fair wolf's head snapped up, its red eyes swiveled to her, and a low growl rumbled in its chest. It took a slow, deliberate step in her direction, completely forgetting about Nox for the moment. That was the opening he needed. He pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the searing pain in his chest. He backed away quietly, putting a large, moss-covered boulder between himself and the monster. She bought me some time, he thought. Gotta make it count. He used his parkour skill, his feet finding easy purchase on the slick surface of the boulder. He scrambled to the top in a few quick movements. From his new position, he could see Syrian slowly backing away, luring the fair wolf further from him. He focused, his posture shifting without a conscious thought. He held his hand out, his fingers spread, like he was holding the hilt of an invisible sword. The weapon mastery skill was active, and it felt natural, like he'd been a swordsman his whole life. Let's see how you like this, he thought, and pulled on his corrupted mana. He swung his arm down, and a blade of pure, dark energy shot from his fingertips. It wasn't the solid, invisible strike from before. It was a wider, slashing arc of power. He sent another one right after it, then a third, aiming for the creature's broad back. The fair wolf stopped stalking Syrian. It turned its head and saw the slashes of dark mana coming for it. It didn't try to dodge. It just opened its mouth wide and inhaled. The dark energy seemed to unravel in midair, flowing into the creature's mouth in shimmering streams. The red light in its eyes flared brighter, and its muscles seemed to swell. It let out a sound that was almost a contented sigh. So, it's true, this thing loves mana. It turned its full attention back to him, a hungry look in its eyes. He needed a new plan, and he needed it now. Syrian was still on the other side of the clearing, trying to catch her breath, clearly in no shape for a real fight. He looked at his own hands, then down at the forest floor. A small smirk pulled at his lips. Guess I'm going old school. He remembered what it was like back at school, that thrill of punching monsters. Nox, what is your intention? Syrian called out, her voice tight with concern. You cannot hope to kill such a creature with a mere branch. He had scooped up a heavy, broken tree limb from the forest floor. It was thick and jagged on one end. I'm not fighting it, he shouted back, moving away from the boulder and into the dense trees. I'm just making it angry. The fair wolf shook its head, turning away from the boulder. It spotted him weaving between the trees and let out another angry roar, then charged after him. Good, he thought. Let's see how you handle the tight spaces. He kept moving, using the trees as cover. He was faster and smaller, and he used it to his advantage. The fair wolf was clumsy in the dense forest, its huge body crashing into tree trunks and getting caught in low-hanging branches. He ducked behind a massive oak and waited. When it lumbered past, he darted out and swung the heavy branch as hard as he could, connecting solidly with the back of its leg. The creature howled, a high-pitched sound of pain and surprise. It spun around, its claws swiping at the air where he had been, but he was already gone, hidden behind another tree. Come on, you big, dumb animal, he muttered to himself, his heart beating fast. This felt more real, more dangerous than just throwing energy around. He saw Syrian moving on the other side of the clearing. She was throwing rocks into the bushes, making noise to distract the fair wolf, pulling its attention away from him whenever it got too close. She's got good instincts, he admitted to himself. The fair wolf was getting angrier. It started snapping at the trees, tearing off huge chunks of bark with its teeth. It was getting frustrated, and frustrated things made mistakes. He saw his chance. The fair wolf had its back to a steep, muddy embankment that dropped about 15 feet. He moved quietly, circling around behind it. He picked up a sharp, heavy rock. Hey, he yelled. The fair wolf spun around to face him. He threw the rock with all his strength. It hit the creature square in the snout with a wet thud. It wasn't enough to seriously injure it, but it made it stumble backward in surprise. Its back feet slipped on the slick mud of the embankment. It fought for its balance for a second, its claws digging uselessly into the soft earth, and then it went over, tumbling down the short cliff with a crash. He ran to the edge and looked down. The fair wolf was lying in a heap at the bottom, tangled in roots and vines. It was trying to get up, but its leg was bent at a weird angle. Broke its leg. Nice. He didn't hesitate. He slid down the muddy bank, his boots digging in for control. He landed near the trapped monster, his makeshift club held ready. The fair wolf snarled and tried to bite him, but couldn't get up. It was all rage and no power now. You're not so fearsome when you cannot stand, are you? He said, his voice cold. He raised the heavy branch and brought it down on the creature's head. Again and again and again, not stopping until the glowing red light in its eyes finally flickered and died. The forest went quiet. He stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, covered in mud and a little bit of monster blood. He dropped the branch. He had one. Without any fancy magic, just a stick and a plan. A blue screen popped up. Fair wolf, corrupted, defeated. EXP gained, 8,000. He stared at the number. 8,000. That was a lot. Syrian slid down the embankment and came to a stop next to him. She looked at the dead monster, then at him. That was an act of profound madness, she said, but a small smirk was on her face. And yet, it proved effective. Yeah, well, he said, wiping some sweat from his forehead. It worked, didn't it? A new blue screen appeared, this one smaller and with a different header. Bonus reward earned. Unorthodox victory. New skill acquired. Primal strength active. LVL1. Description: temporarily flood your muscles with raw power, significantly increasing unarmed damage and strength. causes a heavy drain on stamina. He read the description, a slow grin spreading across his face. Primal strength, huh? Could be useful when mana is not useful. He dismissed the screen just as Syrian spoke again. Are you well? She asked, her gaze steady. You seem distant for a moment. Just thinking, he said, turning to look for a way back up the embankment. Those things travel in packs. She looked up the embankment with him. Run. Run. They ran through the forest, the sounds of snapping branches close behind them. Knox moved easily from one thick tree to the next. He used his parkour skill, the dangerous run feeling almost easy. Syrian was a different story. She was an elf, and this was her natural terrain. She was graceful, but her injured ankle made her slow. She was lagging behind, her breathing coming in ragged bursts. Knox glanced back, annoyance crossing his face. She's too slow. She's going to get us both killed. He was about to yell at her to keep up when he saw her land awkwardly on a thick root. Her ankle gave out completely. She cried out, a loud sound of pain, and tumbled from the branch. She hit the forest floor with a heavy thud. He kept going for another 10 feet, then skidded to a stop, crouching on a low branch. He looked back. Syrian was trying to push herself up, her face pale. The sounds of the pack were getting closer, low growls echoing through the trees. He could see the red glow of their eyes appearing in the darkness. They were closing in on her. Leave her, the old part of his brain screamed. She's a liability. You have your own mission. Survive. He stayed there for a long second, his muscles tense, ready to run. He saw one of the fair wolves, a huge, dark shape, step into the small clearing around Syrian. It lowered its head, a hungry growl rumbling in its chest. Fuck, he muttered under his breath. He wasn't sure why he was doing it, but he knew he couldn't just leave her. He jumped down from his branch, landing softly on the ground a few feet away from her. The wolves stopped, their glowing red eyes shifting to him, the new, bigger threat. Stay behind me, he said, not taking his eyes off the pack. There were at least 5 of them, circling slowly. Syrian pushed herself up, leaning against a tree for support. Knox, no, she said, her voice tight with pain and urgency. I can still fight. I can create a distraction. You can get away. It's fine, he said, a strange sense of calm settling over him. This is the perfect opportunity to test something out. The lead fair wolf, the biggest of the pack, decided it was done waiting. It leaped, a blur of dark fur, and snapping teeth aimed right for his throat. Activate primal strength. He didn't feel a warm rush of power. It was a cold, brutal surge like ice water being injected directly into his muscles. The world seemed to slow down for a fraction of a second. He could see the individual teeth in the wolf's open mouth, the slobber flying from its jowls. A dark, smoke-like energy escaped his lips with every breath, and his eyes began to glow with the same unsettling, corrupted light. He didn't sidestep. He didn't block. He just met the charge head-on. He punched the wolf in the face. His fist connected with its snout with a sound like a sledgehammer hitting concrete. The creature's head snapped back with a sickening crack. The fair wolf, which weighed as much as a small car, was thrown backward through the air. It crashed into a tree and slid to the ground in a boneless heap, its red eyes dark. The other 4 wolves froze, the aggression in their glowing eyes replaced by a flicker of confusion, then fear. The god chat exploded in his head. Lord of Carnage, yes. That's what I'm talking about. Pulverized it with one punch. That's real power. Baron von Cynic, my. The whelp has learned a new trick. How delightfully savage. Still, there are 4 more. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, he's so strong. Face screaming in fear, but that power, it looks so scary. Please be careful, Knox. He didn't have time to read their comments. The remaining fair wolves got over their shock and attacked together, a coordinated wave of claws and teeth coming from all sides. He didn't try to dodge them all. He let one of them get close, its claws raking across his back. The pain was a distant thing, easily ignored. He spun, his elbow catching the wolf under its jaw. It stumbled, and he grabbed it by the thick fur on its neck with one hand. He lifted it off the ground, the creature kicking and snarling, and threw it into another wolf that was lunging at him. The two monsters went down in a tangled mess of fur and limbs. He moved to the next one, his feet steady on the uneven ground. This one was smarter. It fainted high, then tried to bite his leg. He just stomped down hard on its head. There was a dull crunch, and the wolf went limp. He was a whirlwind of brutal, efficient violence. He wasn't a swordsman. He wasn't a mage. He was just a raw force, punching, kicking, and throwing creatures twice his size around like they were stuffed toys. Syrian watched from the base of her tree, her mouth slightly open. The sight was terrifying. This wasn't the boy she'd raced through the city. This wasn't the human who had looked so lost in the arcade. This was something else. The dark energy flowing from his mouth was visible to her, a constant stream of corruption. His eyes were not human. They were glowing pits of cold power. He is a monster, she thought, her hand tightening on her sword hilt. But then another thought followed, unbidden. A cool monster. He took down the third wolf, his breath coming in heavy gasps now. The primal strength skill was potent, but the stamina drain was immense. His muscles were starting to burn, and his movements were getting a little slower. The last fair wolf saw a chance. It didn't charge him head-on. It circled, looking for an opening. It's waiting for me to get tired, he realized. Smart. He let his arms hang at his sides, deliberately making himself look exhausted. The last fair wolf took the bait. It lunged, a dark shape of pure hunger aiming for his exposed side. He moved at the last second, sidestepping the attack with a speed that belied his fatigue. As the wolf shot past him, his hand shot out, not to grab its leg, but to seize its head. He clamped one hand over the creature's upper snout, his fingers digging in. His other hand grabbed its lower jaw, forcing the wolf's mouth open in a silent snarl. The monster thrashed, its powerful body twisting, trying to shake him off. Its claws raked at the ground, but his grip was absolute. A low growl ripped from his own throat, the dark, smoky energy of his corrupted mana swirling from his lips. He squeezed, his muscles screaming with the effort of the primal strength skill. He felt bone give way beneath his grip, the massive skull of the wolf collapsing inward. The creature's struggles stopped instantly. He let the dead thing fall to the ground and looked down at his handiwork. A cold, vicious smirk spread across his face. It wasn't a smile of victory. It was a look of pure, savage satisfaction. The forest went quiet again. The only sound was his own harsh, ragged breathing. The cold power of primal strength receded, and the pain from his wounds hit him all at once. His back felt like it had been shredded, and his whole body ached. He swayed on his feet, his vision blurring. A series of blue screens lit up his vision, one after another. Fair wolf defeated. X4. EXP gained. 32,000. Level up. You are now level 19. All stats increased by 1. You have 5 unallocated stat points. Level up. You are now level 20. All stats increased by 1. You have 5 unallocated stat points. Skill. Primal strength has leveled up due to repeated high-stress use. New description. LVL2. Temporarily flood your muscles with raw power, significantly increasing unarmed damage and strength. Stamina drain is moderately reduced. Skill. Parkour has leveled up from navigating hazardous terrain under pressure. New description. LVL2 further enhances agility and coordination, significantly reduces fall damage and improves climbing speed, increases movement efficiency on uneven terrain. Skill. Regeneration has leveled up from sustained critical damage. New description. LVL2 regenerates health at a moderately increased rate, less effective during active combat. Skill. Indomitable has leveled up from overcoming extreme pain and exhaustion. New description. LVL2 greatly increases resistance to mental attacks and pain. Grant a chance to ignore minor staggering effects from damage. He barely had time to process the skill ups before his full status screen appeared, a detailed report of his current condition. Player status. Name Nox. Level 20. Title. Anomaly Slayer, Dungeon Conqueror, Mercenary Hunter. HP 90/280. MP 5 of 60. Strength 49. Agility 49. Stamina 27. Endurance 44. Perception 37. Luck 24. Unallocated stat points 40. Divine coins 100. Gods watching you 53. Skills: Regeneration, passive, LVL2. Indomitable will, passive, LVL2. Weapon mastery, passive, LVL1. Appraise, active, LVL1. Soul link, passive, Yeta, Kindra, Vesa. Lesser mana weaving, active, LVL1. Parkour, passive, LVL2. Core integration, passive/active, LVL1. Primal strength, active, LVL2. Skill tree, corrupted. Unseen blade, active, LVL1. Shadowmen, passive, LVL1. Syrian pushed herself up from the tree and limped over to him, her own pain forgotten for a moment. She knelt in front of him, her expression a mixture of awe and absolute terror at what she had just witnessed. "Nox?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Are you all right?" He just looked up at her, his face pale and covered in sweat and dirt. "Peachy," he rasped, before he pitched forward onto the ground, completely unconscious. Nox's eyes snapped open to the darkness of the forest, the dream still clinging to him. The old anger churned his gut, thick and familiar. "Damn it all," he cursed, his voice a low growl that was swallowed by the night. He pushed himself into a sitting position, his muscles protesting with a constant ache. The fire had burned down to a small pile of embers that gave off a faint red light. His gaze fell on Syrian. She sat on the other side of the fire, her back against a tree, her sword resting across her lap. Her head kept nodding forward before she would jerk it back up, her body fighting a losing battle with sleep. "She's going to fall over," he thought. "She's no good to me half asleep." He stood up, his boots making a soft sound on the dead leaves. He walked around the fire and stopped in front of her. She didn't seem to notice him until he was right there. "Go to sleep," he said, his voice quiet but firm. She jolted, her eyes flying open, her hand tightening on her sword. For a second, she looked ready for a fight, then her eyes focused on him. "I'm fine," she insisted, but her voice was rough with sleep. "My watch is not over." He just shook his head, unimpressed by her attempt to sound awake. "You look like you're about to pass out," he told her flatly. "You're a liability like that, not a guard." Her jaw tightened, and she looked like she was about to argue, but the fight just wasn't in her. She let out a small sigh, the tension leaving her shoulders. More tired than I thought." "I know," he said. He nudged the rolled-up blanket with his foot. "Get some rest, princess. You need it more than I do." She watched him for a long moment, then gave a slow, reluctant nod. She laid her sword down carefully beside her before moving to the blanket. She wrapped it around herself, her movements slow and weary. Nox took her place against the tree. He picked up a long, thin stick and poked at the embers of the fire. He coaxed a few small flames back to life. He sat there, staring into the small blaze, the quiet of the forest settling around him. "You had a nightmare," she said from behind him. Her voice was just a soft sound in the night. He froze for a second, the stick pausing in the embers. He didn't turn around. "How would you know?" "You were speaking in your sleep," she explained. "Just a few words. But you woke with such anger." He grunted a non-committal sound and tossed the stick into the flames. It sparked, then caught, its light moving on his face. "Just a stupid dream." "What is it you dream of, Nox?" she asked, her curiosity gentle but persistent. He stayed silent, his back to her. He didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to give those memories any more power than they already had. It's none of her business. She didn't push him, but she didn't let the silence hang there either. "In my world," she said, her voice thoughtful, "dreams are sometimes seen as echoes of the soul. They show us what we fear or what we have lost." He finally turned his head to look at her over his shoulder. "Yeah? What do you dream about then?" he asked, turning the question back on her. It was a deflection, but he was also a little curious. She was quiet for a moment, her own gaze lost in the fire. "I dream of Life Woods, my home," she began, her voice taking on a softer quality. I see the sun through the high branches of the ancient trees. I hear the music of my people. Her expression saddened, but sometimes I dream of the day it was attacked, of the betrayal. Betrayal, he thought, the word snagging his attention. He turned fully to face her, his interest piqued. You mentioned that before. What happened? She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. We had an accord with a clan of humans who lived on the edge of our lands, she explained. We believed they were our allies, our friends. But they were seduced by Gorik's promises of power. Her voice became cold. They showed his forces the hidden paths, the weaknesses in our defenses. They led the hounds to our homes. He listened, the firelight moving in his eyes. He didn't say anything. Her story, with its magic and kingdoms, was a world away from his own, but the core of it was painfully familiar. Being turned on by people you thought you could trust. People suck, he said finally, the statement simple and absolute. A small, sad smile touched her lips. They can be, she agreed. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. Is that what you dream of? People like that. He let out a long, slow breath and looked away from her, back at the fire. Something like that, he admitted, his voice low. My old school. The people there. He didn't go into the ugly details of fists and toilets, but he didn't have to. The quiet bitterness in his voice said enough. I was a target. Every day. And I was always alone. The confession hung in the air between them, plain and unadorned. It wasn't a plea for pity. It was just a fact, stated as simply as the color of the sky. So that is why you fight with such fury, she said softly, her voice full of a sudden, deep understanding. That is why you seek power, to never be weak again. He looked back at her, a little surprised she had understood so quickly, so completely. Yeah, he said, the word coming out a little rough. That's about it. I understand that feeling, she said, her gaze steady. But that power you wield, the dark one, it feels as though it is born from that same pain. Be careful it does not consume you, Nox. She gets it, he thought, a strange feeling settling in his chest. She actually gets it, more than those gods do with all their damn commentary. He just nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He didn't know how to respond to genuine concern. I can handle it, he said after a moment, the words his default defense. I hope that you can, she replied. She finally lay down, pulling the blanket up to her chin and turning on her side to face away from the fire. Your watch now, Nox. He watched her for a moment until her breathing evened out into the slow rhythm of sleep. He turned back to the fire, the clearing quiet once more. The conversation had left him feeling strange. The morning light was a soft gray that filtered down through the thick canopy of the forest. Syrian woke up slowly, her body still heavy with a deep, healing sleep. The first thing she noticed was the smell of something cooking. It was a simple, savory scent, and it made her stomach rumble. She pushed herself up, her back stiff from sleeping on the hard ground. Across the clearing, the fire was going again, a small, steady blaze that pushed back the morning chill. Nox was there, his back to her, and he was crouched over a small metal pot balanced on two rocks over the flames. He stirred whatever was inside with a stick. He didn't look like he did during the fight. The dark energy was gone, and his posture wasn't as tense. He just looked like a boy trying to make breakfast. She tried to stand up, but a sharp pain shot through her ankle. She winced, a small sound escaping her lips before she could stop it. Nox's head turned to the sound. He looked at her, his expression neutral, not annoyed. Morning, he said. His voice was quiet. Your ankle's still bad? It's manageable, she lied, though the throbbing told a different story. He didn't call her out on the lie. He just nodded and turned back to the pot. A minute later, he stood up and walked over to her. He held out one of the tin cups from his pack. It was full of steaming noodles. Here, he said. Eat. She took it from him, surprised by the simple gesture. The cup was hot. She had to shift it in her hands. Thank you. Don't mention it, he said. He went back to the fire and ate his own portion straight from the pot. They ate in a comfortable silence. It wasn't like the tense quiet from before, filled with suspicion and questions. This was just easy. Syrian watched him as she ate her noodles. He wasn't glaring into the trees or fidgeting with his sword. He just ate his food, his gaze fixed on the fire. He seems calmer, she thought. It was a small change, but after the raw fury she'd seen him unleash, the quiet was a big difference. When they were done, she set the empty cup down. The food had warmed her up. She felt a little more human. "What is our plan for today?" she asked, her voice clear. "Do we continue north?" He looked up from the fire. He was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him thinking, his gaze distant. Can't tell her about the system mission, he thought. Cleanse the forest? She'd think I'm crazy or on a suicide mission. And I'm not strong enough to do it alone. Not yet. He looked over at her, his eyes landing on her injured ankle. "We're not going anywhere yet," he said, his tone firm but not harsh. "Your ankle is messed up. You can barely walk on it." "I can manage," she started to protest. "We cannot afford to linger here. This forest is not safe. And it'll be even less safe if you can't run." He shot back, his voice still even. "We're staying put for a day or two. Let heal up some." He saw the argument still in her eyes and decided to sell his cover story. "Besides," he added, leaning forward a little, "this place is full of those wolves, and probably worse things. It's a good place for me to train. Get stronger." She looked at him, her brow furrowed. "You wish to hunt those creatures deliberately?" "They're walking EXP," he said, then caught himself. "Shit, they're good practice," he corrected, hoping she didn't notice the slip. "I need to get better at fighting if we're going to survive out here. And this place is a perfect training ground." His logic, while reckless, made a certain kind of sense. She was a liability with her injury, and he needed to be stronger to protect them both. The thought of him actively seeking out those monsters was frightening, but she also remembered the power he had used. Maybe he knew what he was doing. "Very well," she agreed slowly. "But you will not go off on your own." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said, though he had definitely been dreaming of it. "Come on." He stood up and walked over to her. He knelt down and looked at her ankle. It was swollen and bruised. "We need to wrap this up properly." He took a straight, sturdy branch and broke it to the right length. He then pulled a strip of clean cloth from his pack and carefully made a splint for her. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he worked, his movements efficient and sure. She just watched him, her mind trying to reconcile this focused, almost caring person with the cold, angry boy from the day before. When he was done, he stood up. "That should hold it for a while. Let's go for a walk. Scout the area." He helped her to her feet, his grip firm on her arm until she found her balance. She put a little weight on her injured foot and found that the splint made a big difference. It still hurt, but she could walk without feeling like her ankle was going to snap. They walked through the forest, the splint he had made for her ankle surprisingly sturdy. She still limped, but it was better than before. The quiet between them wasn't tense anymore. It was just quiet. "Knox," she said after a while, her voice soft. He grunted, not looking at her. "What?" "I've been thinking," she said, her eyes on the path ahead, "about what you said last night. About your old school and the people there." She paused, picking her way over a thick root. "And about my home. The betrayal." He didn't say anything, just kept walking. He didn't want to talk about this stuff. It was pointless. "For so long," she went on, "that hatred I felt, it clouded my eyes. I saw all humans through the memory of that one clan who wronged my people." She stopped walking, and he found himself stopping too, turning to look at her. "I have always known, logically, that not all humans are bad," she said, her eyes meeting his. They were clear and steady. But knowing it and feeling it are two different things. She looked down for a second, then back up at him. "These past few days with you, you have taught me a lot. You are different." A small, genuine smile touched her lips. It wasn't the amused smirk she'd had when she beat him in the race. This was something else. It was warm, and it seemed to light up her whole face. "You're not like them," she said simply. He just stared at her. His brain, which was so good at figuring out fight patterns and monster weaknesses, had no idea what to do with that look. With that smile, he felt something in his chest, a weird, unfamiliar thump, thump, thump that was way faster than it should be. "What the hell is this?" he thought, his own mind feeling foreign to him. "Why is my heart beating so fast? This is stupid." He was so surprised by the new sensation that he looked away, his eyes finding a particularly boring-looking tree to stare at. He felt his face get a little warm. Syrian's smile faded, replaced by a confused frown. "Did I say something to offend you?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "No," he managed to get out, his voice a little rough. "It's nothing. Let's just keep moving." He started walking again, faster this time, leaving her to hurry after him, her brow still furrowed in confusion. He didn't get it. He had faced down mercenaries and monsters that could tear him in half, and he'd felt that cold thrill of the fight. But one smile from an elf princess, and his body was acting like it was the most dangerous thing in the world. Such a dangerous feeling. Lola sat on the edge of an old building, her feet hanging over the street far below. She wasn't looking at the city lights. She was just staring at the small, dark orb in her hand. It had been dark for over an hour. Her own hand started to shake, just a little. She closed her eyes, but that just made things worse. All she could see was her sister's face, Layla, with that cocky, annoying grin she always wore. "Stupid," she thought, her throat feeling tight. "You were so damn stupid." She remembered their last fight like it was happening right now. "Don't worry so much, sis," Layla had said, checking the strap on her sword. "It's just one weak princess. Me and Rura can handle her." Lola had stood by the door of their small base, her arms crossed tight. "I'm telling you, that boy with her is trouble. He's not normal." Layla had just laughed, a sound that always got under Lola's skin. "You're just mad he made you run." "I'll get him for you too," she'd said with a wink. "Just be careful," Lola had told her, her voice tight. But Layla had already been walking down the hall, her back to her. "Always am," she called back. "Liar," Lola thought now, staring at the dead screen in her hand. The orb was a tracker. It was supposed to glow with a light that matched the mana inside Layla's chest. It was a promise they had made when they were just kids, a way to always know the other was still alive. But now, the orb was dark. That could only mean one thing. Layla was dead. Maybe it was a monster. This new world was full of them. But she knew where Layla was going. She was going for the princess, and the princess was with him. With that boy, Nox. The thought made her stomach feel sick. Could he have done it? He was strong. She knew that. She remembered how fast he was, how hard he could hit. He had some weird, dark power she didn't understand. But strong enough to kill Layla? And Rura? It didn't make any sense. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling. She remembered the look in his eyes right before she ran. Those dead eyes. He had wanted to kill her. She had felt it. She pushed herself to her feet. Tears had made clean tracks down her dirty face, but her eyes were clear now. They were cold. This wasn't about the job from Gorick anymore. This wasn't about the money. This was about her sister. She had to know what happened. And if Nox was the one who had hurt Layla, Lola looked out over the city. "I'm going to end you." Nox moved, the blade a silver line. The spider, a huge thing with too many eyes and hairy legs, lunged at him. He ducked under a leg that could have crushed him and swung his sword, cutting deep into its side. Black stuff that wasn't blood sprayed out. The spider let out a high-pitched sound that hurt his ears. Syrian watched from a safe distance, her back against a tree. She kept her hand on her own sword, ready to move, but she knew getting involved would just get in his way. He's getting better, she thought, her eyes following his every move. He wasn't just a brawler anymore, not like when he fought the wolves with his bare hands. He was using his sword now, his feet moving in patterns that were messy but smart. He was learning fast. But where did this thing come from? Nox dodged another attack, his boots sliding on the dead leaves. He was using the forest now, weaving between the trees, making the spider's size a weakness. He was a different person from the boy she had met. He was focused and deadly. The cold look in his eyes wasn't just anger anymore, it was confidence. She was so focused on him, on the deadly dance between him and the monster, that she didn't notice the shadow that fell over her. She didn't hear the soft skittering sound from the thick branches of the tree she was leaning against. A single drop of something wet and sticky landed on her cheek. Her blood ran cold. Her head snapped up. Another spider, just as big as the one Nox was fighting, was hanging right above her, its fangs as long as her hand, dripping with venom. It was already coming down. She didn't have time to think. Her body just reacted. She threw herself sideways, a desperate, rolling dive that tore at the splint on her ankle. She landed hard, her injured leg taking the brunt of the impact. A loud crack echoed in her own ears, followed by a pain so bad it made her vision go white for a second. She cried out, a sound of pure agony. The spider landed where she had been a moment ago, its legs hitting the ground with a heavy impact. Knox heard her scream. He spun around, his own fight forgotten for a second. He saw her on the ground, clutching her leg. He saw the second spider turning towards her. Shit, he snarled. He didn't have time to run over there. He looked at the spider in front of him, then back at Syrian's. I can't go and save her with this thing around. He tried to end it fast, but the spider was proving to be more annoying than he liked. He kept taking glances at Syrian. Seeing her about to die really made his heart ache. She was on the ground, her face white with pain. She tried to push herself back, away from the spider that was now looming over her. Her hands scrabbled at the dead leaves, her broken ankle making it impossible to stand. Useless, she thought, the word a bitter taste in her mouth. I'm just a weight, a burden. He was fighting for his life, and all she could do was scream and wait to be rescued. Or die. She saw him fighting his own spider, saw the desperation on his face. He was trying to get to her, but he couldn't. He's going to die because of me, she thought, despair washing over her. The spider raised a thick leg, ready to bring it down on her. Then she remembered the feeling of incredible power that had filled her, given to her by that voice in her head. Aurelia. That power, she thought, her mind racing. Why haven't I tried to use it? Did I think it was a one-time thing? Was I scared of it? She was. The memory of what she had done to those two girls, the coldness she had felt, it scared her. It wasn't a power of her kind, and that terrified her. But being scared was a luxury she didn't have right now. She couldn't just lie here. She closed her eyes, ignoring the spider, ignoring the pain in her leg. She focused all of her will, all of her desperation, on a single, silent plea. Aurelia, if you can hear me, help me. For a second, there was nothing but the sound of the spider's heavy leg cutting through the air. Then a brilliant, golden light exploded from her body. It wasn't a soft glow. It was a flash, so bright it washed out the dark colors of the forest. Knox, who was dodging a lunge from his own spider, had to shield his eyes for a second. When he looked again, he froze. Syrian was still on the ground, but she was kneeling now, not cowering. The golden light swirled around her, and in her hand was a new sword. It wasn't her simple steel blade. This one was ornate, its hilt shaped like the branches of a tree, its blade shining with a light of its own. Her eyes were open, and they were glowing with that same golden light. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked divine. The spider's leg came down. She didn't flinch. She just swung the new sword in a simple, effortless arc. The blade met the spider's leg. There was no clang of metal on chitin. The blade passed through the thick limb like it wasn't even there. The leg, completely severed, flew off and crashed into a tree. The spider let out a sound of confused pain. It stared at its stump, then at her. She got her feet. She didn't limp. She stood straight and tall, the golden light around her making her look like a warrior from an old story. Knox just stood there, his own spider forgotten for a second. He stared at her, his mind completely blank. What the hell, he thought. Who is she? She looked at the wounded spider, her expression calm, and took a single step forward. The wounded spider let out a high-pitched screech and lunged, its remaining legs scrambling on the dead leaves. It was a messy, desperate attack, driven by pain and fury. Syrian didn't even dodge. She raised her glowing sword, holding it with two hands, and brought it down in a single, vertical slice. The blade moved with an unnatural speed, a whisper of golden light cutting through the dark forest. The spider just fell apart. There was no spray of black goo, no sound of tearing chitin. The two halves of its body, separated cleanly, slid past each other and hit the ground with a dull thud. The parts almost immediately began to dissolve, turning into motes of golden light that faded into the air. Knox's own spider stopped its attack. It reared back, its cluster of eyes fixed on Syrian, on the impossible thing that had just happened. A low, keening sound came from its fanged mouth, a sound of fear. It turned, its instincts screaming at it to run. "You are not leaving," she said. Her voice was calm, but it held a power that was absolute. The spider didn't listen. It scrambled backward, its many legs digging into the dead leaves, trying to get away from the glowing woman who had just unmade its kin. She moved. It wasn't a charge like his, all fury and pounding feet. It was like she was gliding over the forest floor, her feet barely touching the ground. The golden sword left a faint trail of light in the air as she closed the distance in a single, flowing motion. The spider spit a glob of thick, black venom at her. She didn't dodge. She just lifted her free hand, and a small, golden shield came into existence. The venom hit the shield and sizzled into nothing. She was on the spider now. She leaped a graceful, spinning jump that took her high into the air, right over the creature's head. For a moment, she was framed against the dark canopy of the forest, a figure of impossible light and grace. Knox's breath caught in his throat. His heart, which had been pounding with the adrenaline of his own fight, started beating even faster for a whole different reason. He had never seen anything like it. His own fighting was, let's just call a mess. This was beautiful, he thought, the word feeling strange and out of place in his mind. She came down, her body twisted in the air, her sword a single, perfect line of light. The blade entered the top of the spider's head and passed through its entire body without a sound. She landed behind the monster, her back to it, the glowing sword held loosely at her side. The spider stood perfectly still for a second. Then, a thin line of pure, golden light traced the path her sword had taken. The light flared, and the spider's massive body dissolved, turning into a cloud of gold dust that floated up and vanished into the trees. The forest went quiet. The golden light around Syrian faded. The shining, ornate sword in her hand dissolved into the same golden dust, leaving her empty-handed. Her eyes, which had been glowing with a divine power, returned to normal. Then her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the ground in a heap, her body trembling. The calm, powerful goddess was gone, and in her place was just a tired girl with a broken ankle. Knox finally got his feet to move. He walked over to her slowly, his own sword hanging forgotten at his side. He looked at the spot where the spider had been, then down at her. She was trying to push herself up, her face pale and covered in a thin layer of sweat. "What the hell was that?" he asked. His voice was quiet, full of a confusion he couldn't even try to hide. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and a little dazed. I don't know," she whispered, her voice rough. "It just happened." She winced, her hand going to her injured ankle. It looked way worse now, swollen and twisted at an angle that was definitely not good. He knelt beside her. "You said you were out of mana." "I was," she said, shaking her head. "That wasn't my power. It was something else. Someone else." He didn't ask what she meant. He could see she was in no shape to explain, and honestly, he wasn't sure he wanted to know right now. He had seen a lot of weird things since the world went nuts, but an elf princess turning into a glowing, spider-killing god was now officially at the top of the list. And his heart, it was just the fight, he told himself, trying to make the thought stick. That's all it was. He looked around the forest. They couldn't stay here. The smell of monster guts, even the shiny kind, was probably going to attract more trouble. "We have to move," he said. "I cannot walk," she said, frustration clear in her voice. "My ankle. I think it is broken this time." He looked at her leg, then at her face. He let out a long sigh. "I know." He put his sword away and turned his back to her, crouching down. "Get on." She just stared at the back of his shirt. "What?" "Get on my back," he repeated, his voice a little rough with impatience. "You can't walk, and I'm not leaving you here to get eaten by whatever else is in this stupid forest. So get on." She was quiet for a long moment. He could practically feel her hesitating. Then he felt her shift behind him. She carefully put her arms around his neck, her hands resting lightly on his shoulders. He reached back, sliding one arm under her legs to support her. Then he stood up. She was lighter than he expected, and she smelled nice. A mix of something like rain and leaves. It wasn't the smell he was used to, and it was seriously distracting. "Hold on tight," he said, and started walking. Syrian was for sure lighter than he expected, but after an hour, even a light weight felt heavy. Her arms were wrapped loosely around his neck, her head resting against his shoulder. Her breathing was a soft, steady rhythm against his ear. This is so weird, he thought. He tried to focus on the path, on the sounds of the forest, on anything but the feeling of her being so close. It didn't work. His mind kept coming back to it. He could feel the warmth of her body through his shirt. He could smell that weird, clean scent of rain and leaves. It was distracting. It made it hard to think straight. Just walk, you idiot, he told himself. Get to a safe spot. That's the mission. He finally saw it as the sun started to get low in the sky. A shallow cave, more like a deep overhang in a rocky cliff face. It wasn't much, but it was defensible and dry. "We'll stop here," he said, his voice a little rough. He walked into the cave and carefully lowered her to the ground, his movements surprisingly gentle. She let go of his neck, her hands brushing against his skin for a second. His stomach did a weird flip. He backed away quick and started gathering dry wood for a fire, not looking at her. The god chat came alive. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and passion. Oh, look at them. The wounded warrior carrying the beautiful princess to his hidden lair. It's so romantic. My heart is all aflutter. Red heart, fire. Baron Vaughn's cynic. He looks like a pack mule, and she looks like dead weight. Romance is clearly dead if this is what passes for it. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. He was so gentle with her. See? He does care. He's learning. This is so good for him. Sparkle's sparkling heart. He ignored them and got a small fire going. The light pushed back the shadows and made the small cave feel a little less like a tomb. Syrian was leaning against the rock wall, her eyes closed, her face pale. He sat down on the other side of the fire and pulled out the pouch of endless trail mix. He ate a handful without really tasting it. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the flames. He had to say something. The quiet felt too loud. "You know," he started, his voice a bit awkward. "It's kind of funny." Her eyes opened. She looked at him, her expression tired and confused. "What's funny, Knox?" He gestured between the two of them. "Us. We're always hurt. We get beat up, heal a little, then get beat up again." He shook his head, a small, humorless smile on his face. "We never get to 100%. It's like we're in a race to see which one of us falls apart first." She stared at him for a long moment. He thought maybe she was mad at him for joking about it. Then a small sound escaped her. It was a soft, musical note that he'd never heard from her before. She was laughing. It started as a quiet giggle, then grew into a real laugh. He was so surprised he just stared at her. "You are right," she said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. The laugh had made her wince from the pain in her ribs, but she was still smiling. "We are a party of bruises and bad tempers." Her smile was real. It lit up her whole face, and it made his heart rise again. He actually smiled back, a real, small smile that felt strange on his own face. "Yeah, we are." The air between them felt different now, lighter. The small laugh they had shared the night before had changed something. The air in the cave felt better when Knox woke up. He watched the steady rise and fall of her shoulders as she slept, then quietly got up to check the perimeter of their small shelter. Nothing. The forest was quiet. He came back and sat by the fire, pulling out the first aid kit he'd bought. Syrian stirred when he moved, her eyes opening slowly. "Morning," he said. "Good morning, Knox," she replied, her voice still thick with sleep. She pushed herself into a sitting position, her gaze immediately going to her swollen, bruised ankle. He didn't say anything, just moved over and knelt beside her. "Let me see." She hesitated for a second, then shifted, allowing him access. He carefully unwrapped the makeshift splint he'd made. The skin around her ankle was a mess of purple and blue, and the swelling hadn't gone down. His touch was surprisingly light as he examined it. He wasn't a doctor, but it was easy to see it was bad. She's not walking on this for a while, he thought. He thought about the girls, about Kendra, Yeda, and Veza. When he was with them, He felt like he was always on guard, always the one in charge. He had to be the leader, the one with the answers, the one who pushed them to be stronger. It was a role he'd taken on because he had to, but it was exhausting. It felt like a job. With Syrian, it was different. She wasn't looking to him to be her boss. She was a high-level princess who got into a bad spot. They were just two people stuck in a mess, trying to survive. It was simpler. He didn't have to pretend to be anything. And that felt natural, more real than anything he'd felt with the others. He took a roll of clean bandages from the kit and began to wrap her ankle again, his movements careful. "You are very focused when you work," she observed, her voice quiet. He just grunted, not looking up. Someone has to be. He finished wrapping the ankle, making it snug and secure. "It's still broken. We need to find a better place to hole up for a few days." He stood and walked to the mouth of the cave, looking out into the dense woods. "And I need to get stronger. Those spiders were a good start, but they won't be the last thing we run into." He looked back at her. She was watching him with those steady, unervingly perceptive eyes. He still didn't know how to deal with that look. He turned away. "I'm carrying you again. Let's go." Malar ran through the village. Her feet were quiet on the dark earth between the houses that were built into the trunks of massive trees. She ran up a ramp that spiraled around a trunk and pushed open a simple wooden door. "Mother," she said, breathing hard. An older dark elf looked up from the table where she was grinding herbs with a stone pestle. Her skin was the color of rich soil, and her white hair was braided with dark green leaves. "What is it, Mela?" she asked, her voice calm. "Calm yourself." "Intruders," she said. "They have entered the forest." The woman, Elder Fenna, set her pestle down. Her calm expression tightened. "Has one of the children been taken?" "No," Mela said, shaking her head. "It's a human, a young man, and he is with an elf." Fenna's posture relaxed for a moment. "An elf? Is one of our patrols lost?" "No, mother," she said. "She's not one of us. Her skin is pale, and her hair is the color of sunlight." The small bit of calm on Fenna's face vanished. Her expression became as hard as stone. "A sun elf," she said, the word sounding like a curse. "She's injured," Mela added. "The human is carrying her on his back." Fenna stood up and walked to the open doorway, looking out into the dense canopy of their hidden village. The sun elves have not set foot in these woods for 100 years. Not since they stood by and watched our lands burn. Her voice was cold. "They're cowards and traitors to the forest." "What should we do?" Mela asked. "We must know why she is here," Fenna said, turning back to her daughter. "And why she travels with a human. That is not their way." She looked at Mela, her eyes sharp. "Did the human seem like a captor?" Mela shook her head. "No. He was tired, but he was carrying her with care, and she did not seem afraid of him." Fenna was silent for a long moment. She looked from her daughter to the open doorway. "A human and a sun elf," she said, her voice low. "This is an ill omen." She turned her head and called out, her voice sharp. "Liessa, Valeria." Two more dark elves entered the house. One had a wide, eager smile and carried two short swords on her back. The other was silent, her face a blank mask, a longbow held in one hand. "Mela will lead you," Fenna said, her eyes hard. "You will find the intruders. You will bring them here." She paused, her gaze locking onto her smiling daughter. "Unharmed, if possible. I want to know why they are in my forest." "Yes, mother," Liessa said, her smile not fading. "Son, elf, huh? This will be interesting." Valeria just gave a short nod. "Go," Fenna said to Mela. "Do not fail me." Mela nodded and turned, leading her sisters out of the house. They moved through the village without a sound. When they reached the edge of the trees, they did not stay on the ground. They leaped into the high branches, their movements fast and sure. They were dark shapes moving through the canopy. "Mela, are you sure the human was carrying her?" Liessa asked as she landed on a branch next to her. "Yes," Mela replied, not slowing down. "He was very careful." "Maybe he's her slave," Liessa suggested. "I've heard the sun elves do that." Valeria landed on a thick branch without a sound. She was always quiet. "I do not think he is her slave," Mela said as she landed next to her sister. "He was not acting like one. Maybe he's just a bad slave," Liessa said with a grin. She jumped to the next branch, her two short swords moving on her back. Or maybe she likes him. The sun elves are weird like that. Either way, Mother wants to know why they are here, Melas said. We need to focus. I'm focused, Liesa said. I'm focused on how weird everything has been since the great quake days ago. Did you see the edge of the forest? All the ground is broken and strange. It wasn't like that before. Mela nodded. I saw it. The earth does not look right out there. That is why Mother said no one is to leave the woods. But I want to see it, Liesa complained. Maybe the human is from out there. What did he look like, Mela? You got a better look than we did. Mela thought for a moment, remembering the boy she had seen. He has black hair, and he was very strong-looking. She paused, her cheeks getting a little red. He was also kind of hot. Liesa stopped dead on a branch and burst out laughing. Hot? Mela, you can't be serious. He's a human. Even the silent Valeria turned her head to look at Mela. I'm serious, she insisted, her face getting redder. You're too young to be thinking about boys, Liesa teased, jumping over to her. Especially human boys. They're dirty and they smell bad. He didn't look dirty, Mela mumbled, looking away. Valeria spoke, her voice flat and low. He is the enemy. It is illogical to find the enemy attractive. See? Valeria agrees with me, Liesa said with a grin. She patted Mela on the shoulder. Don't worry, little sister. We'll capture your hot human for you, and then you can see him up close. Mela just shook her head and pushed her sister's hand away. Just shut up. We have a job to do. She jumped to a higher branch and squinted, her eyes scanning the forest ahead. She was the best scout among them. There, she said, her voice dropping. I see smoke. Liesa's grin vanished, replaced by a look of focus. Where? Mela pointed. About half a mile that way. They must have made a camp. She looked at her two sisters. We move in quiet. We find out what they're doing. No one attacks until I give a signal. Understand? Liesa drew her two short swords. I understand. Valeria just nodded, her hand already moving to the longbow on her back. They moved fast now, dark shapes flowing through the high branches of the forest. They didn't make a sound. Soon, they could see the small cave and the fire burning in front of it. They stopped on the branches of a huge tree that overlooked the camp. Down below, the human boy was putting more wood on the fire. The sun elf was sitting with her back against the cave wall, her leg wrapped in a bandage. So she is hurt, Liesa whispered, her eyes fixed on the elf. This will be easy. Wait, Melas said, holding up a hand. Let's see what they do. They watched as the boy finished with the fire and then walked over to the girl. He knelt and checked her bandage, his movements careful. He's helping her, Melas whispered, a confused look on her face. He's not a slave. He's her protector, so we just have to get him out of the way first, Liesa said. Valeria didn't say anything. She had already pulled an arrow from the quiver on her back. She knocked it to her bowstring, her movements slow and deliberate. She raised the bow, taking aim. The sharp tip of the arrow was pointed right at the back of the human's head. Just as Valeria's fingers were about to release, Melas' hand shot out and pushed the bow down. What are you doing? Melas said. Her voice was a low hiss. Mother said to bring them back alive. Valeria lowered her bow without a word, her face the same as always. Liesa landed on the branch next to them without a sound. She's right, Val. Mother will be angry if you kill the human. She wants answers. Liesa smirked at Mela. And besides, Mela wants to see her hot human up close. Mela's face got red. Shut up, Liesa. We have a mission. They looked back down at the cave. The human was still kneeling by the sun elf. He finished rewrapping the bandage on her ankle. He said something to her that the sisters couldn't hear. The elf smiled at him. It was a real smile, not a polite one. The human looked surprised for a second. Then he smiled back. Look at that, Liesa whispered. He's taking care of her. He must be her slave. I told you. He does not act like a slave, Melas said, her eyes narrowed. And she does not act like a master. Sun elves hate humans. They would never smile at one like that. Maybe she's just stupid, Liesa said with a shrug. Who cares? This is boring. Let's just go down there and grab them. She put her hands on the hilts of her short swords. No, Melas said. We wait. Something is not right here. The human, he is a fighter. I can tell. But he is also a protector. It does not make sense. She couldn't take her eyes off him. She watched him stand up and put more wood on the fire. He moved with a confidence that was not like a slave at all. The elf is the stronger one, Valeria said. Liesa turned to her. What? The one with the broken ankle? She can't even walk. Her energy is higher, Valeria stated simply. Mela nodded. Valeria is right. The elf is powerful, even if she is hurt. And the human is an unknown. We cannot just rush in. She looked at her two sisters. We need a plan. I have a plan, Liesa said, her smile returning. I jump down and fight the human. You and Valeria grab the princess. Easy. No, Mela said firmly. We will use the sleep darts. We will capture them without a fight. She looked at Liesa, and that means no stabbing. Mother wants them unharmed. Liesa sighed, a dramatic, annoyed sound. Fine, darts it is. But if it goes wrong, I'm stabbing him. It won't go wrong, Mela said. She readied her own blowgun. We move on my signal. Get ready. Liesa and Valeria both nodded, pulling out their own small blowguns. They moved to better positions in the high branches, their dark forms hidden by the thick leaves. Mela watched the two people below. The human was now sitting across the fire from the elf, and they were talking quietly. She raised her blowgun to her lips. She took a silent breath, ready to give the signal. Down below, the human suddenly stopped talking. He went completely still. Then he lifted his head and looked directly up at the tree where Mela was hiding. His eyes seemed to lock right onto her position. Mela froze, the blowgun still at her lips. We're being watched, he said. He was looking right at her. His eyes were cold, and they felt like they saw everything. He saw us, Liesa whispered. She sounded excited. Good. Now the fun can start. She drew her two short swords, her smile sharp. Valeria did not wait. Her face was blank as her fingers released the bowstring. The arrow flew from the bow with a quiet hiss. It was a perfect shot, aimed right at the human's head. Valeria, no. Mela screamed, but it was too late. The arrow was already gone. Down by the fire, Nox moved. He didn't duck or jump away. He just lifted his hand. The arrow, which should have hit him in the head, was now caught between his fingers. He had snatched it right out of the air. Liesa's smile vanished. What the hell? She said, her voice dropping. He looked at the arrow in his hand. Then his cold eyes went back up to the tree where the sisters were hiding. My turn, he said, his voice quiet, but it carried up to them. He threw the arrow. It was not a normal throw. The arrow shot back with twice the speed, screaming through the air. Get down, Mela yelled. Liesa tried to jump to another branch, but she was too slow. The arrow slammed into the tree right next to her head. It went through the loose sleeve of her tunic, pinning her arm to the thick bark. She was stuck. He missed, Liesa said, but her voice was shaking a little. She tried to pull her arm free, but the arrow held her fast. He didn't miss, Mela said, her own heart beating fast. He was aiming for your arm. He looked up at them, his face unreadable in the firelight. Syrian was trying to stand up behind him, using the cave wall for support. You have one chance, he called up to them. Come down now, or I'll come up there and get you. There's 3 of us and 1 of him, Liesa growled, still struggling with the arrow. We can take him. We cannot, Valeria said. It was the first time she had spoken. She was looking at Nox with a new expression on her face. His physical capabilities are beyond normal human parameters. Our initial assessment was incorrect. He did not wait for them to decide. He took a single step back and looked up at the thick branch they were standing on. Fine, he said. Have it your way. He lifted his free hand and made a slashing motion in the air. Mela didn't see him throw anything, but she heard a strange sound, like the air itself was being cut. The branch they were standing on just split in 2. Mela screamed as the thick branch gave way beneath her feet. Liesa cried out in surprise, her arms still pinned to the falling part of the tree. They were falling. Valeria hit the ground first. She landed in a crouch without a sound. Mela landed a moment later, stumbling on the uneven floor before she caught her balance. The massive branch crashed down beside them. Liesa was still attached to it, her tunic pinned to the wood by the arrow. "Get me down!" she yelled. From the other side of the clearing, they heard the human start moving toward them. "Hurry," Melas said. Valeria did not need to be told. She ran along the length of the fallen branch, her feet sure on the rough bark. She grabbed the arrow with both hands and yanked it free. The wood splintered. Liesa dropped the last few feet to the ground with a grunt. "They're coming," Melas said, her voice a low hiss. "Up, now." She threw a thin rope up into a high branch of another tree and began to climb. Valeria did the same. Liesa scrambled after them, her movements clumsy from the fall. They disappeared into the canopy just as Nox and Syrian arrived where they landed. Nox looked at the broken branch on the ground, then up into the trees. "They were here," he said. Syrian stood beside him, her hand near the hilt of her sword. "I cannot sense them. It is as if they were never here at all." She touched her temple, her brow furrowed. "This has not happened before. My senses have never failed me so completely." "It doesn't matter," he said. He kicked a loose piece of wood. They ran off. "Let's go. We're wasting time." He turned and started walking away. Syrian watched him for a second, then looked back at the trees. "Yes," she said quietly. "We are." She followed him, but she kept looking back over her shoulder. High above them, hidden by the leaves, the three sisters watched them go. "He just left," Liesa said. She rubbed her arm where the arrow had pinned her sleeve. "He didn't even look for us." "He knew he could not find us," Melas said. She watched Nox's back as he walked away. And Valeria was right. He is beyond normal human parameters. "He caught my arrow," Valeria said, her own voice flat and quiet. "Then he threw it back. The velocity was greater than that of my bow." Liesa drew one of her short swords. "So he is strong, and he has a strange trick. It does not matter. I can still take him." "You will not," Melas said, not looking at her sister. "You will follow my orders. We will observe them. That is what Mother commanded." "But Mela," quiet Melas said, "we will follow, from a distance." They waited until Nox and Syrian were out of sight, then they dropped back to the ground. The small fire Nox had made was now just a pile of smoking embers. Liesa walked over to where Nox had been standing and kicked at the dirt. "He is just an arrogant human," she said, "and his elf is weak. Why are we being so careful?" "Because he is not normal, and you're not in charge," Melas said. She walked over to the spot where Nox had been kneeling. "He knew we were here. He looked right at me. So, he got lucky," Liesa said. "I can still take him." "We will follow," Melas said, her voice firm. "We will report back to Mother. Those are the orders. This is boring." A voice came from right behind them. "Looking for me?" The three sisters spun around. Nox was standing there, leaning against a tree. He had his arms crossed, and he looked like he had been there the whole time. He had appeared without making a single sound. "How did you get here?" Mela asked, her hand moving to her blowgun. "I walked," he said. Liesa did not wait for an order. "I've had enough of you," she said, and charged at him. Her two short swords were a blur as she ran. She swung both swords at his neck from opposite sides, a move that was impossible to block completely. Nox did not try to block. He lifted his left hand and caught one blade by its flat side. At the same time, his right hand shot out and clamped down on Liesa's wrist, stopping the other sword just inches from his throat. Her eyes went wide. She tried to pull her swords back, but he held her wrist in a grip of solid iron. The blade in his other hand did not move. "What?" she said. He ignored her and looked at the sword in his hand, then at the girl he was holding. A blue screen appeared in his vision. Liesa, Dark Elf Scout. Level 40. HP 858-50. MP 200-200. A fast and aggressive fighter. Weak to direct, overwhelming force. Level 40, he thought. Interesting. "Let go of my sister," Melas said. She and Valeria had their own weapons drawn, but they were not attacking yet. They were watching, their faces full of shock. He let go of Liesa's wrist and pushed her sword away. She stumbled back, her eyes still wide. She looked at her swords, then back at him. "How did you do that?" "You're sloppy," he said, his voice flat. He looked past her at the other two. "You are all elves, but why is your skin darker than Syrian's?" "How dare you?" she yelled, her voice echoing. You arrogant human. You think you can talk down to us just because you have a few tricks? Liesa, stop, Melas said, stepping forward. She held a hand out to her sister, but her eyes were still locked on Nox. He is too strong for you. I asked a question, Nox said. He ignored Liesa's outburst completely and just looked at Mela. Are all the elves in this forest like you? Just then, a twig snapped behind him. He didn't turn. Syrian limped into the clearing, leaning heavily on a branch she was using as a crutch. Her eyes went wide when she saw the 3 dark elves. Nox, I told you not to go off alone, she said. She saw the weapons in their hands, and her own hand went to her sword. You know them? He asked her. She shook her head, her gaze fixed on the 3 sisters. I do not know them personally, she said, her voice low. But I know their kind. They are ashen elves. Dark elves. And what does that mean? He asked. It means their connection to the world is different from mine, she explained, taking a limping step closer. Their mana, it has been altered. They are born from a corrupted world seed. Liesa let out a harsh laugh. Corrupted? Is that what the Sun Elves are calling us now? You know nothing about us. I know that it makes your people more aggressive, Syrian said calmly, and that you have no love for my kind. You abandoned us. Liesa suddenly screamed. Her face was twisted with rage. When the humans burned the outer groves, your people did nothing. You hid in your sunny kingdom and let our lands turn to ash. That is not what happened, Syrian said, but her voice faltered. Melas stepped in front of her sister. Enough, Liesa. She looked at Nox and Syrian, her expression serious. My mother, Elder Fenna, wishes to speak with you. Nox crossed his arms. And if we say no? It was not a request, Mela replied, her voice firm. She wants to know why a sun elf and a human are trespassing in her woods. You will come with us. Now, Valeria raised her bow, knocking an arrow in one smooth, silent motion. The sharp tip was pointed right at Nox's chest. Nox looked at the arrow pointed at his chest, then back at the 3 sisters. He was not impressed. He let his eyes move from the quiet archer to the one who looked like the leader. Then he looked at the one who was still angry. A smirk touched his lips. You know what? He said. His voice was casual, like they were just talking about the weather. I'm tired of all this. Let's make a deal. Mela looked at him with suspicion. We are not here to make deals, human. This one's easy, he said, ignoring her. He pointed at Liesa. You, the angry one. You think you're fast, right? You think you can take me? Liesa's eyes narrowed. I can, she spat. You just got lucky before. Good, he said with a shrug. Prove it. You get 1 shot. You land 1 hit on me, just 1, and we'll go with you. No more questions, no more fighting. We'll walk right to your place and meet your mother. Syrian grabbed his arm. Nox, do not be a fool. This is a trap. It's fine, he said, not looking at her. He kept his eyes on Liesa. So what do you say? You hit me, you win. Easy, right? Liesa, no, Melas said, her voice sharp. He is trying to trick you. But Liesa was already grinning, her anger replaced with a hungry, confident look. I accept, she said, raising her 2 short swords. This will be over in 5 seconds. Liesa, I am your leader, Mela insisted. I said no. And I said yes, she shot back. It's the fastest way to finish the mission, right? I hit him, they surrender. What's the problem? Valeria lowered her bow just a little. She watched Nox, her face emotionless. Mela let out a frustrated sound. Fine, she said. 1 hit. And if you fail, we are doing things my way. She looked at Nox. And you, human, if you hurt her, this deal is off, and we will kill you where you stand. I'm not going to touch her, he said, a lazy smile on his face. He took a few steps into the middle of the clearing and stood there, his hands hanging loose at his sides. Ready when you are. He's bluffing, Liesa thought, a predatory grin spreading across her face. This arrogant human thinks he can mock me? I'll wipe that smirk off his face. Fine, human, she hissed, her short swords flashing as she shifted into a low, aggressive stance. Don't blink. You might miss it. Liesa, be careful, Mela called out, her hand hovering over her blowgun. She did not like this. The human was too calm. Nox didn't move. He just stood in the center of the clearing, his arms hanging loose. Liesa exploded into motion. Whoosh! She didn't run. She vanished, leaving a faint afterimage that dissolved a split second later. She reappeared to Nox's left, her blade a silver arc aimed at his ribs. Nox tilted his torso. The blade sliced through the air, missing him by less than an inch. Before the first strike even finished, Liesa was gone again. She reappeared on his right, her other sword thrusting for his shoulder. He took a half step back. The tip of the blade passed harmlessly in front of his chest. What? Her mind screamed. He dodged them both? No, impossible. He just got lucky. She didn't stop. She became a whirlwind of steel, a storm of attacks from every conceivable angle. Her blades cut the air with sharp hisses, creating a cage of death around him. Zigzagging, vanishing, reappearing, she used every ounce of her elven speed. But he never moved from his spot. A slight turn of the head, a small shift to the shoulders, a barely perceptible pivot of his foot. Each movement was minimal, precise, and perfect. He wasn't just dodging. He was making a mockery of her speed, expending almost zero energy while she burned through her stamina. Mela and Valeria watched from the edge of the clearing. They could not believe it. He is not even moving from his spot, Mela said, her voice a low whisper. Valeria's eyes were wide. His movements are too efficient. There is no wasted energy. It's not possible. He felt Liesa's blade slice the air next to his ear. This is good practice, he thought. He let a small amount of his corrupted mana flow from his core. He did not form a weapon with it. He spread it into a thin, invisible layer over his skin. I can feel the air move before she even strikes. It is like having eyes everywhere. The mana layer tingled when Liesa's sword cut through it. It was a perfect early warning system. She jumped back, breathing hard. Her confident grin was gone. It was replaced by frustration and anger. Stand still and fight me, human. I'm standing still, he said. His face was calm. You're the one running around. Raph! She screamed and charged again. This time she just ran at him and used her pure speed, swinging wildly. She's getting desperate, he thought. How disappointing. I was expecting more for someone her dash. His own thoughts cut off. His entire body went rigid. The wild, angry look on Liesa's face vanished for a split second, replaced by a look of cold, murderous calm. He felt it then, a spike of pure, killing intent. So sharp and focused it felt like a physical needle pricking his skin. It wasn't coming from the swords she was swinging. It was coming from her other hand. A feint, he realized. The whole wild charge was a fake to cover this one real attack. The world seemed slow. He saw her right sword swinging high in a wide, obvious arc meant to draw his eye. At the same time, her left hand, which had been hidden by her body, was moving. A small, wicked-looking dagger was in her grip, aimed right for his heart. He didn't have time to dodge. Fine, he thought, a thrill shooting through him. Let's see if this works. He didn't try to move out of the way. He just stood his ground and poured his corrupted mana into his arm. He forced the energy to condense, to harden, turning the skin and muscle of his forearm into something as strong as steel. Clang! The dagger hit his arm with a sound like a hammer striking an anvil. It wasn't a soft thud of blade on flesh. It was a loud, metallic shriek that echoed through the quiet forest. Her eyes went wide with shock. She felt the impact travel up her arm, a painful jolt that made her bones ache. Then her dagger shattered. The blade exploded into a dozen tiny pieces of metal that flew through the air. The pieces of Liesa's shattered dagger fell to the forest floor with a series of quiet clinks. She stared at her empty hand, then at the man who had broken her blade with nothing but his arm. Her mind was blank with shock. He broke my dagger? With his skin, she thought, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. What is he? She looked up at him. The lazy smile was gone, replaced by a look of cold assessment. The murderous intent that had been radiating from her just a moment ago was now gone, replaced with a feeling of pure disbelief. Nox thought he had this one. She's out of tricks, he thought, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. She tried her best, and it wasn't good enough. But then something strange happened. The shock on Liesa's face twisted and warped, melting away into a wide, manic grin that was far more unsettling than her earlier anger. Her eyes, which had been wide with surprise, now narrowed with a terrifying excitement. The killing intent he had felt before came flooding back, 10 times stronger than before. A faint, dark purple aura started to bleed from her skin, swirling around her like smoke. Wait, he thought, his own surprise catching him off guard. She's not giving up? She's getting more excited? Liesa, no. Mela screamed from the edge of the clearing. She looked terrified. Don't do it. You can't use that here. It's too late for that, big sister, she said, her voice a low, throaty laugh. This human, he's interesting. He's really, really interesting. The dark aura around her exploded outward, becoming a visible shroud of violent energy. Her short swords, which she still held, began to glow with the same purple light. The ground at her feet started to crack under the pressure of her power. What is she doing? Syrian asked, her voice tight with alarm. Nox, be careful. That is a forbidden art of the Ashen Elves. I have only read of it in the old scrolls. What is it? He asked, not taking his eyes off the now glowing dark elf. It is called the Ashen Blood Technique, she explained, her voice low and urgent. It draws upon the corrupted world seed within them, trading their own life force for a massive, temporary boost in power. It is a suicidal technique. Liesa let out a wild, ecstatic laugh. Suicidal? Your sun-kissed books got it wrong, princess. It just hurts a little afterward. She leveled her glowing blades at Nox. But for the chance to fight someone like you, it's worth it. He watched her with a new level of interest. So, she's burning her life force for power? That's reckless. And very, very stupid. He felt a strange sort of respect for her. She was willing to do anything to win. Valeria, who had been silent, finally spoke. Mela, we must stop her. Mother will be furious if she harms herself. We can't stop her now, she said, her voice filled with dread. Once the Ashen Blood is active, it has to run its course. All we can do is watch. Liesa did not wait any longer. She moved. It was not the instant vanishing act from before. This was different. The air itself seemed to shatter as she charged, leaving a trail of purple energy in her wake. She was so fast he could barely track her. He didn't have time to dodge. He brought his arms up in a cross block, pouring as much corrupted mana as he could into them to harden them. Boom! The impact was like being hit by a freight train. Her twin swords slammed into his arms, and the force of the blow was immense. His feet dug trenches in the soft earth as he was thrown backward a full 10 feet. His arms screamed in protest, the bones vibrating from the sheer power of her strike. She's so much stronger now, he thought, his own surprise turning into a grim focus. This was no longer a game. This was a real fight. She was on him again before he could even recover his balance. She was a blur of purple light and steel, her attacks relentless. He was forced onto the defensive, blocking and parrying, each impact sending a jarring shock through his body. He was no longer toying with her. He was fighting to survive. Clang, crack, boom. Their fight was a whirlwind of noise and destructive energy. Trees near them splintered and fell as stray blows missed their mark. He's holding his own, Mela whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. How is he still standing? He is not just standing, Valeria stated, her voice flat with awe. He is adapting. She was right. He was no longer just blocking. He was starting to predict her movements, the invisible layer of his mana giving him a split-second edge. He ducked under a wild swing and countered with a punch to her stomach. His fist, empowered by a surge from his primal strength skill, connected with a solid thud. She grunted, the air knocked from her lungs, and she stumbled back a step. It was the first clean hit he had landed. She just laughed, a trickle of blood leaking from the corner of her mouth. Yes, that's it. Hit me harder. She's insane, he thought, his own blood beginning to sing with the thrill of the fight. Completely insane. He felt a savage grin spread across his own face. And I think I like it. He stopped holding back. The dark, smoky energy of his own corrupted power began to pour from his lips, his eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. He met her next charge head-on. It was no longer a human fighting an elf. It was two monsters tearing at each other. He grabbed her arm as she swung, his grip like steel. She kicked him in the chest, but he didn't even flinch. He just tightened his grip and twisted, forcing her to drop one of her swords. He spun her around and threw her into a massive tree. The trunk cracked from the impact. She bounced off and landed on her feet, her grin wider than ever. "More," she screamed. "Stop this. Both of you," Mela yelled, but they couldn't hear her. They were lost in their own world of violence. The dark energy of Nox's corrupted power swirled around him, a visible manifestation of his will. Lies's purple aura pulsed violently. They were exhilarated. This is a real fight, he thought. She is not holding back at all. She was ecstatic. He is so strong, she thought. This is the best fight I have ever had. He dodged another glowing strike and punched her in the ribs. The force of the impact made a loud sound. Liesa gasped but did not retreat. She swung her remaining sword in a wide, horizontal arc. He ducked under the blade and drove his shoulder into her stomach. The collision sent her stumbling backward. "Is that all you have?" he shouted, his voice a low growl. "More!" she screamed back, her grin wide and bloody. "Give me more!" He was about to grant her wish. A savage grin spread across Nox's face, mirroring Liesa's own bloody one. "This is the best fight I have ever had," he thought. His body was aching and his stamina was draining, but he felt more alive than ever. He lowered his stance, his feet planting firmly on the cracked earth. He let the last of his primal strength fade away, the feeling of raw physical power replaced by something sharper. He activated his weapon mastery skill. A new kind of focus settled over him, the sword in his hand feeling like a natural extension of his arm. "I wonder," he thought, a new idea forming in his mind. "What happens if I use Unseen Blade with this? Can I shape it with the mastery?" He did not get the chance to find out. The moment his focus shifted to the corrupted mana in his core, it responded with a violence that surprised even him. The dark, smoky energy did not just flow from his lips. It erupted from his entire body, a swirling vortex of black power that churned the air around him. The ground began to tremble, and small pebbles vibrated and danced on the forest floor. The pressure in the clearing became immense. It was a heavy, physical weight that pressed down on everyone. Syrian stumbled back, her hand flying to her chest. She was having trouble breathing. This power, she thought, her eyes wide with awe and fear. It's so much greater than before. Valeria took a step back, her stoic expression finally cracking. Her bow was shaking in her hand. Mela, who had been ready to intervene, was frozen in place, her body refusing to obey her commands. Liesa felt it the most. The wild, manic energy of her ashen blood technique sputtered and died, snuffed out like a candle in a hurricane. The ecstatic grin on her face vanished. It was replaced by a look of pure terror. The human in front of her was no longer a human. He was a god of death, a being of pure, suffocating power. His glowing eyes held no emotion, no thrill of the fight. They were just empty voids that promised oblivion. Her legs began to shake uncontrollably. Her sword felt impossibly heavy in her hand. The strength left her body, and her knees buckled. She collapsed to the ground, her blade clattering on the earth beside her. She could only stare up at him, her mind completely blank, her throat too tight to even scream. She was helpless. He took a slow step towards her, his hand raised. A blade of pure darkness, more solid and terrifying than anything he had manifested before, began to form in his grip. He was going to kill her. No! Mela finally broke free from her paralysis. She moved with a speed that was even greater than what Liesa had shown. In a single, explosive instant, she crossed the entire clearing. She was a blur, her face full of desperate fury. Her hand shot out, grabbing him by the face. Her strong fingers dug into his skin as she used all of her strength to slam his head toward the ground. But his head did not hit the ground. He had stopped her. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She was putting all her weight, all her momentum into the slam. Yet he had stopped her cold. He was just kneeling there, his head still in her grip, unmoving. Then she felt it, a cold pressure against her stomach. She looked down. His other hand was pressed flat against her, right over her vital organs. "Be careful." His voice was a low, chilling whisper. "I could kill you before you even blink." The dark energy swirling around him pulsed, and she felt a wave of pure, killing intent wash over her. Her blood ran cold. She knew he was not bluffing. She froze, her hand still clamped on his face. She was trapped. If she tried to finish her attack, he would gut her. If she let go, he would be free to kill her sister. She looked past him at Liesa, who was still on the ground, trembling and helpless. "The bet is over," she said, her voice tight and strained. He did not respond, his glowing eyes fixed on her. The pressure of his hand on her stomach was a constant, terrifying reminder of how close to death she was. "The deal was one hit," she said, speaking quickly. "If she landed one hit on you, she won. You lost, human." A flicker of confusion passed through him, and the immense pressure in the clearing lessened just a fraction. "She never touched me." "She did," she insisted, her eyes pleading now. "Her dagger. It hit your arm. You blocked it, but it was a hit." She saw him think about it. He remembered the loud clang of the dagger hitting his mana-hardened arm. He remembered it shattering. A hit, he thought. She's calling that a hit. It was a ridiculous technicality, a desperate attempt to twist the rules. But it was also a way out of the standoff. The dark energy around him slowly receded, flowing back into his body. The ground stopped trembling. The air in the clearing became breathable again. He looked at Liesa, then back at Mela's hand on his face. He let out a long, slow breath. "Fine," he said, his voice returning to normal. "You win." He pulled his hand away from her stomach. Mela let go of his face as if his skin had burned her. She stumbled back, putting distance between them, her chest heaving as she gasped for air. The fight was over. He looked over at Liesa, who was still on her knees, staring at the spot where his dark blade had been. He walked right over to her. Mela tensed, her hand moving to her weapon. "Stay back, human." He ignored her and stopped in front of her sister. He looked down at her, then held out his hand to her. "Good fight," he said. The words were simple, and he meant them. Liesa looked up at his outstretched hand, then at his face. She looked confused, like her brain couldn't make sense of the gesture. Her own hand, which was trembling slightly, lifted slowly and placed it in his. He pulled her at her feet. Mela and Valeria just stood there, their mouths slightly open in shock. They had been ready for another attack. A trick, something. They weren't ready for this. He let go of her hand. She stumbled a little, still looking unsteady. Her aura was completely gone. She just looked tired and pale. "You're an idiot for using a move like that," he told her, his voice flat. "But you've got guts. I'll give you that." She just stared at him, not saying anything. He turned to Mela. "A deal's a deal. We'll go with you." He walked over to Syrian and crouched down, turning his back to her. "Get on." Syrian, who had watched the whole thing with wide eyes, didn't argue this time. She put her arms around his neck, and he stood up, carrying her just like before. Mela watched him, her expression a mixture of suspicion and a new, grudging respect. "This way," she said finally. She turned and led them into the trees. Valeria fell in a step behind them, her bow still in her hand, but no longer aimed. Liesa picked up her remaining sword and followed them, her eyes never leaving Nox's back. They walked through the forest. The three dark elf sisters were in front, Mela in the lead, Liesa still looking annoyed, and Valeria silent as a shadow. Nox followed, his steps steady, with Syrian on his back. Her arms were around his neck, just quiet. After a while, she shifted a little, her voice a whisper right next to his ear. "Nox!" He grunted, a quiet sound to show he was listening. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Going with him so easily?" He was quiet for a few steps, his boots crunching on dead leaves. He didn't have a good answer, not really. She's right, he thought. The old me would have just killed them. Or tried to. Would have been less complicated. He remembered the cold feeling from the fight, with Liesa, the dark power. It was easy to fall into that. Too easy. But then he thought about the girls, about Syrian. It wasn't the same. I'm tired of that, he thought. Tired of being alone all the time. He had pushed Kendra, Yeda, and Vaso away to keep them safe, but he had missed having them around. It was a stupid, weak feeling, but it was there. Maybe this is better, seeing what it's like to have people, not just enemies. I don't know, he said out loud, his voice low. He kept walking. The me from a few days ago would have just tried to kill them and moved on. He felt her stiffen a little on his back. But I'm tired of that, he went on, his voice still quiet. Tired of being alone. He paused, the words feeling strange in his mouth. Just wanted to see what it's like to have people around, I guess. She was quiet for a second. Then her arms around his neck tightened. She rested her head against his back. It was a simple, solid feeling. He kept walking, trying to ignore the way his heart started beating a little faster. You know, she said, her voice still a whisper against his ear. You're growing on me, Knox. His heart skipped a bit again. His face felt hot. What is this feeling? It's the same as before. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just kept walking, carrying her through the quiet, dark forest. Mela glanced back over her shoulder. The human was still walking, his pace steady, with the sun elf princess on his back. He's dangerous, she thought. She remembered how he'd caught her sister's blade, how he had broken it with just his arm. She remembered the cold look in his eyes when he had her pinned. But then she watched him now. He adjusted the princess on his back, a small, careful movement so she wouldn't slip. The way he was with her, it was gentle. He hadn't just left her behind, even though she was hurt and slowing him down. He's dangerous, but he's also protective. She couldn't figure him out, and she couldn't help but notice the way his shoulders looked strong, the way he moved with that easy confidence. He's kind of hot, she thought, her face feeling a little warm. Just as she was thinking it, he looked up. His eyes met hers across the small distance between them. She looked away fast, her head snapping forward to stare at the path ahead. Crap, he saw me. It's him, he thought. What was that all about? He kept walking, Syrian quiet on his back. A few hours later, Mela pointed ahead. The village is just through these trees. As they stepped past the last line of trees, Knox felt it. It was like walking into a wall of pure hate. Dozens of eyes were on him, hidden in the shadows of the massive tree houses from up on the high walkways. He could feel their hostility, sharp and cold. Damn, they really hate humans. Mela led them down the main path. Dark elves started to come out of their homes, their faces hard. The whispers started first, a low hiss that spread through the crowd. A human! What is that filth doing here? And look, a sun elf. A traitor. Syrian tensed up on his back. Her arms, which had been resting loosely around his neck, tightened their grip. She pressed her face against his shoulder, trying to hide from the glares. He could feel her trembling, just a little. This is getting annoying, he thought, but he just kept his pace steady, his eyes scanning the crowd. He didn't look scared. He just looked bored. An older elf with a long, gray braid and a scarred face stepped out in front of Mela, blocking their path. What is the meaning of this? He snarled, pointing a finger at Knox. You bring this thing into our home. The elder wishes to see them, Mela said, her voice firm. Step aside, Jor. The elder has lost her mind if she's inviting our enemies to her hearth, the old elf shot back. More elves gathered behind him, their hands on their weapons. A few had bows, arrows already knocked. That's a sun elf traitor on his back, someone yelled from the crowd. They let our lands burn. Kill the human. He taints our soil with his presence. The noise got louder, the anger swelling. Liessa, who had been quiet, now had a smug smirk on her face. She liked the chaos. Valeria stood behind Mela, her face the same as always, but her hand was on the hilt of a dagger at her belt. This was a mistake, Syrian whispered, her voice shaking right next to his ear. Too late now, he whispered back, not moving a muscle. He met the stare of the old elf. He didn't back down by looking away. He stared right into his eyes. I will not allow it, Jor said, drawing a wicked-looking curved knife. The human dies here. He took a step forward. The other elves behind him raised their bows. Knox let out a quiet sigh. He carefully shifted Syrian's weight, getting a better grip on her legs. He was about to put her down and just end this, but Mela moved first. She stepped right in front of Jor, her own hand on her weapon. You will stand down, she said, her voice ringing with an authority that surprised him. "This is a direct command from my mother. You will defy the elder of this village." Jor froze, his knife half raised. The other elves hesitated, their bows still aimed but their fingers not on the strings anymore. "She is a sun elf." He spat on the ground. "Have you forgotten our history? Have you forgotten what they did?" "I have forgotten nothing," she said, her voice cold. "But I obey my elder. And so will you." She stared him down, her gaze unwavering. The old elf's face was twisted with anger, but after a long, tense moment, he lowered his knife. He shot one last look of pure hatred at Nox and Syrian, then stepped back into the crowd, muttering curses. Mela turned back to Nox. "Follow me," she said, "and do not stop." She led them through the parting crowd. The elves still glared, their hatred a physical thing in the air, but they let them pass. They spat on the ground where he walked. He just ignored it. It was pointless to get angry. It's not like their hatred is not justified. Mela led them into a house built into the side of a massive tree. The inside was simple, just a table, a few chairs, and a fire pit in the center of the room. A woman with white hair stood there, watching them as they came in. Nox carefully set Syrian down, letting her lean against the wall for support. "Damn," he thought, looking at the woman. "The mana coming off her is insane. No way I can fight that." "Mother," Mela said with a bow of her head. "Leave us," the woman said. Her voice was calm, but held a power that made the air feel heavy. Mela nodded and ushered her two sisters out of the house, closing the door quietly behind them. The woman, Fenna, turned her attention to Nox and Syrian. "A sun elf," she said, her eyes on Syrian. "It has been a long time since your kind has dared to show their faces in these woods." "We did not mean to trespass," Syrian said, her voice respectful but firm. "Our path north was blocked." Fenna's gaze moved to Nox. "And a human, one who fights my daughters and walks away." She tilted her head. "You are an unusual pair." "The road turned into a forest," he said, shrugging. "We just need to get through. We're not looking for trouble. Trouble has a way of finding those who enter my lands uninvited," Fenna replied. She looked at Syrian's injured ankle. "You are in no condition to travel." "I will be fine," Syrian insisted. "No, you will not," Fenna said, her tone final. "You will not be leaving this forest. Not yet." Nox crossed his arms. "And who's going to stop us?" Fenna smiled, a slow, cold smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am." He felt the pressure in the room increase. The mana that was rolling off her was so thick he could almost see it. It felt like the air itself was trying to crush him. "Okay, she's not bluffing." "You have brought conflict to my people," she went on, her voice still calm. "My daughter, Liesa, was reckless, but you are a dangerous unknown human. And you, Sun Elf, are a reminder of a betrayal my people have not forgotten." "We have no quarrel with you or your people," Syrian said. "Your presence here is the quarrel," she said. She walked over to her table and picked up a small, dark herb, rolling it between her fingers. "You will stay in this village. My daughters will see to your needs." She looked up, her eyes sharp. "You will be our guests, until I have the answers I seek." "Guests," he thought, a humorless smirk on his face. "Yeah, right. We're prisoners. And if we refuse," he asked, just to see what she would say. She crushed the herb in her hand, its dark juices staining her fingers. "Then you will find that the trees of this forest have very deep roots," she said. "And they're very good at holding things that do not wish to be held." He stared at her, a challenge rising in his chest. He knew he couldn't beat her in a straight fight, but he had to know. "Fine," he thought, a stubborn spark igniting in his chest. "Let's see just how big the gap really is." He didn't move, didn't draw a weapon. He just reached for his mana. He let it bleed out of him, a slow, deliberate release. The air in the small house began to change, growing thick and heavy. A pressure that had nothing to do with the woman's own powerful aura started to build, a chilling presence that made the flames in the fire pit flicker and shrink. Syrian gasped, her hand going to her throat as she struggled for breath. The feeling was suffocating, a familiar, cold dread that she recognized instantly. "Nox, stop," she warned, her voice strained. Don't. He ignored her. His kept pouring out, filling the room. It was like a silent, invisible tide of pure hostility. He pushed it further, trying to see her reaction, trying to get a read on her. Finna didn't even flinch. She just stood there by her table, her expression unchanged, as if she were waiting for a pot to boil. She let him fill the entire room with his corrupted mana, letting the weight settle on everything. Are you finished? She asked, her voice calm and completely unimpressed. It is a potent energy you have for a human, but you are just an ant trying to shake a mountain. Before he could even process the insult, she let out a small sigh, like she was bored. Then she released a tiny fraction of her own power. It wasn't a wave or a blast. It was like a single, sharp note played in the key of pure power. The mana he had built up didn't just get pushed back. It was completely erased, annihilated in an instant. His vision tilted violently. The floor seemed to drop out from under him, and the walls of the small house warped and twisted. A wave of intense nausea hit him so hard he gagged, his stomach churning as if it were trying to turn itself inside out. He stumbled, his hand flying out to catch himself on the wall, but his fingers just scraped against the wood. The world was spinning. He felt like he was about to throw up all over the floor of the elf elder's house. You humans, she said, her voice echoing in his spinning head, are so full of yourselves. The world slowly stopped spinning. He leaned against the rough bark of the wall, swallowing hard and forcing down the sour taste in his throat. The pressure was gone, but the memory of it left him feeling weak and hollowed out. Finna didn't even look at him anymore. She had dismissed him completely. Her attention was now on Syrian. Your ankle, she said, her gaze steady. The bone is fractured. It will not heal on its own. She walked back to her table and picked up the stone pestle, adding a few more dried leaves to the bowl. I will prepare a poultice. It will speed the mending. Syrian looked surprised. You would help me? You are a guest in my home, she said, beginning to grind the herbs again. It is my duty to see to your well-being, whether you appreciate it or not. Her words were simple, but they carried the unspoken threat. You are under my care and under my control. She lifted her head, not looking at the door, but her voice carried. Mela. The door opened a moment later, and Mela stepped inside. She glanced at Knox, who was still leaning against the wall, then at her mother. Take our guests to the East House, Finnis said, not pausing in her work. See that they have water. They are not to leave it. Yes, mother, Mela said with a bow. She turned to Knox and Syrian. This way. Mela led them out of the house. Knox followed, his jaw still tight from a humiliating display of power he'd just been on the receiving end of. The crowd of dark elves was still gathered, their hostility still clear. As they walked down the path, the god chat, which had been silent during the confrontation, popped into his vision. Of course, they wouldn't miss a chance to kick him while he was down. Baron von Cynic? Oh dear. I could kill you before you even blink. And then he got shut down like a misbehaving child. The secondhand embarrassment is exquisite. Trickster God Hermes, for LOL, that was brutal. He went from super scary Dark Lord to a dizzy toddler in like 2 seconds flat. She didn't even break a sweat. Faced with tears of joy. Lord of Carnage, pathetic. All that power, and he can't even stand up to a real opponent. He let her get in his head. Knox felt his own thoughts leaking out. A wave of pure, unfiltered annoyance. Oh, shut up. All of you. Aurelia's private message appeared a moment later. Her text box a much more welcome sight. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. Private chat. Don't listen to them, Knox. Finna is an elder. She's probably been using mana since before your great-grandparents were even born. It's okay that you're not as strong as her yet. You're still learning. Sparkling Heart. He dismissed her message with a mental nod of thanks. The other gods were right about one thing, though. The display had been pathetic, but they were wrong about how he felt. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't defeated. This is awesome, he thought, a slow, dangerous grin spreading across his face. The ache in his body was a dull throb, but underneath it, a fire was being lit. He had just touched a mountain. He had felt its sheer, immovable weight, and all he could think about was how he was going to learn climb it. So this is what real power feels like. I've got a long way to go. The feeling was intoxicating. He had a new goal, a new benchmark. Get as strong as that old elf woman. Then get stronger. They reached another house, this one a little smaller and set apart from the others. It looked sturdy, but the windows were high and narrow, more like slits in a fortress than windows in a home. Mela pushed the door open. "You will stay here," she said, her voice formal. She pointed to a stack of clean blankets and a bucket of water in the corner. "You will be brought food twice a day. Do not attempt to leave." Liesa, who had been trailing behind them with a sour look on her face, stepped forward. "And don't think about trying any more of your cheap tricks, human," she sneered. "My mother is not as patient as I am." He just looked at her, his grin not fading. "Yeah? Your mother also didn't get her dagger shattered by a cheap trick." Her face flushed with anger, and she opened her mouth to shoot back, but Mela put a hand on her shoulder. "Enough, Liesa. Let's go." Mela gave Nox one last, unreadable look before pulling her sister out of the house. Valeria was already gone, having vanished as silently as she had appeared. The door closed with a heavy thud, and Nox heard the sound of a thick wooden bar being slid into place on the outside. He let out a long breath and carefully set Syrian down on one of the blankets. "We are prisoners," she said, her voice quiet. "Yeah," he replied, stretching his arms above his head, wincing as his sore muscles protested. He walked around the small room, his eyes taking in their new cage. "But they're giving us a place to sleep and free food." He looked over at her, his eyes bright with an energy that seemed completely out of place. "And I've got time to train." She just stared at him, her brow furrowed. He had just been completely overpowered by the elder, and now he was acting like he'd just been given a gift. She didn't understand him at all, and for some reason, that made her smile. He walked over and sat down on a blanket across from her, the small space of the house feeling both like a cage and a strange sort of sanctuary. He glanced at her leg, which she was holding carefully, trying not to move it too much. "How's the ankle?" "It still hurts," she admitted, shifting a little to find a more comfortable position. "But the poultice Finna gave me, it feels warm. I think it is helping." "Good," he said, leaning his head back against the wall. They sat in silence for a minute, the only sound the faint, distant noises of the elf village outside their barred door. She watched him, scanning his whole vibe. "You are not angry," she finally said. "We are prisoners, and you were just utterly defeated. Yet you seem almost pleased." He let out a short, quiet laugh. Pleased isn't the right word. He looked at his own hands, flexing his fingers. "But I'm not angry either." She tilted her head, trying to understand the strange logic of the human boy in front of her. "Do you regret it then?" she asked, her voice soft. "Coming into this forest? Following me into all this trouble?" He looked up, and his eyes met hers. They weren't cold or distant. They were burning with a low, intense fire she hadn't seen before, not even in their fights. "No," he said, his voice completely serious. He leaned forward a little, a small, genuine smile appearing on his face. It was a smile full of a dangerous kind of excitement. "Before I met that woman, I thought I was getting strong. I thought I was a big shot after taking down a few monsters and scaring off that mercenary." He shook his head, his gaze distant for a second. "But that? What she did? She didn't even try. She just erased me." He looked back at her, his eyes bright. "Now I know what real power looks like. I know how high the mountain goes." He leaned back against the wall again, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. "So no, I don't regret it at all," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "In fact, I'm glad we came." Syrian just stared at him, a slow smile spreading across her own face. He was an impossible, reckless, infuriating human, and she was starting to think that was exactly what she liked about him.